Hello everyone, welcome to our audiobook channel. If you enjoy this story or want to hear more exciting content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your feedback helps us improve and bring even more captivating stories. Enjoy listening. Darkness of the Swamp Rescue My Sister is a story about interdependent sisters, the struggle for space, and the power of secrets. 16-year-old Sky has stopped playing the knight in shining armor for her annoying younger sister Dada. Moving away seems like the perfect opportunity to start over. In her isolated new neighborhood, Sky tries to fit in, but Dada alienates everyone, becoming obsessed with the swampy woods behind her house and building monstrous sculptures out of sticks and bones. Then Dada disappears. And when something terrifying claws at Sky's window in the middle of the night, claiming she's the only one who can save Dada, Sky knows she'll stop at nothing to bring her sister home. Part 2. William. Explorer, you tell yourself, this is not what you came for. Although it is good here, and green. You had meant to move with a kind of largeness. You had planned a heavy grace, an anguished dream. Gwendolyn McEwen, Dark Pines Underwater. 8. I wake to the pale beginnings of daylight, to footfalls overhead in the kitchen. It takes me a heartbeat to remember why my pillow smells like smoke, why tension and misery are crouched waiting for me, seeping in with consciousness. Dada. Still not back. Dad slouches at the kitchen table in front of the laptop, poking disconsolately at it, and looks up as I come into the kitchen. I just fell asleep, that's all. The other night. Tears well up at the confession. Some champion. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I don't know how it even happened. Dad gets up to pull me into a hug. I fight for composure while he murmurs reassurances. Where's Mum? I croak eventually. Still in bed. She was awake most of the night, anyway. Let's keep quiet so she can get some rest, okay? I nod, hurriedly wiping my eyes. He gives my shoulders a last squeeze. I'm going to make some more coffee. You want some? While he rinses out the carafe, I lean against the patio door. The green wood of the balcony is marbled with streaks of water. It must have rained last night. That's not good. Officer Leddock said rain would wash away her trail, make it harder for the dogs to pick up her scent. Not that they had any luck yesterday, apparently. And on the railing, what the hell? I push the door open, then the screen, ignoring the chilly bite lingering in the air. Lined up on the railing are 3, 4, 5 little bone-pale ovals. Skulls. Like the ones Dada collected from the woods. Dad. I try to keep my voice calm, but I must sound freaked out anyway because he hurries to join me. What is it? I point. Were those here last night? Not that I saw. He frowns at them, picks one up between 2 fingers, and then sets it down again, scrubs his hand against his jeans. Well, that's not creepy at all, is it? Who would do that, I demand. Dad shakes his head. I was wondering more how they'd get up here. Fair point, there's nothing to climb on. Maybe it was an animal of some kind. You know how Mog used to leave critters lined up on the doorstep. I did hear a bell last night. But it was never bones that Mog left behind as presents. The coffee maker gurgles in the kitchen, breaking the silence. Well, tell the police about it, Dad says, just in case. Leave them there and come on inside for now. I follow him reluctantly, but linger at the door, still watching the bones on the railing. Like they might scuttle out of sight if I turn my back. Dad's hand on my shoulder startles me. He passes me a steaming mug that's almost too hot to hold. I think of the sword spinning out into the dark, the lights beckoning in the woods. An idea kindles coldly into life. Dad, do you think the police would let me help look? They didn't let me, he says bleakly, and I wince. It's just that I was in her room last night. And I found my sword. On her bed under the leaves. His brows quirk in weary puzzlement. I stumble on. I know it sounds dumb, but it was like it was supposed to be some sort of message. I think she wanted me to come looking for her. And last night, I heard this bell. It was just like Mog's, and I thought maybe. Dad sighs and rubs his forehead. Skyhone, it doesn't really matter who she wanted to come looking for her or why she went into the woods. We have to let the police do their job. Okay. But what if it's some kind of lead? I hate the pleading note in my voice. I sound like a little kid. Well, I suppose you could tell the police about it. I don't know what kind of lead that could really give them, but no harm in trying. He fixes me with a look. But you stay out of those woods. Got it. I stare into my coffee to avoid his eyes. It's true, there's nothing I could do out there. If she were just waiting somewhere to hear my voice, they'd have found her in about 5 minutes. There's a knock at the front door, and Dad hurries to answer it. I trail over to the computer. It's open to the latest post on the search page. Dad's smiling face again, and on that there's nothing to tell and a plea for information that's followed by an endless string of useless mealy-mouthed comments. I hope she's enjoying this, having everyone's absolute undivided attention. When I stab at the trackpad to close the tab, a satellite image of our neighborhood fills the screen. Our street is a gentle curve, the last clean line of civilization before the wilderness takes over. There's the blank brown expanse of the empty lot, the brush that fades back into the woods, a grey haze at its edges. The zigzag pencil line of the creek slices through the trees, eventually meeting another that snakes off in a different direction, off-screen to the west. She always wanted to know what was back there. I scroll across to follow it, a thin porcelain crack running through the green expanse of the woods. The creek ends in a huge beige oval dead grass, maybe that eats into the forest like a patch of mold. The water widens into a black swath down its middle. That beige tumor is the size of the whole subdivision and then some. Miles across. I can't stop staring at it. Dad returns to the kitchen with Officer Leduc right behind him. He points out the bones on the railing, prompts me to explain how I found the sword. I leave out the part where I chucked it across the garden. The story doesn't seem to spark any insights, though he listens seriously and jots down notes as we speak. You've kept your doors locked. Anyone else have a key? No one, Dad says. I guess Sky was out for a bit last night. But other than that, Dada had some bones like that, I find myself saying. Officer Leduc and Dad both blink at me in surprise, and my face heats with that same old second-hand embarrassment. She was collecting them or something, I don't know. She had them in a box a few weeks ago. Well, Officer Leduc frowns. Well, bring the dogs back around, I guess. Just in case. Mr. Mackenzie, maybe you could check her room and see if this collection is still there. Dad nods, but it's me he's looking at. You didn't tell us about this, the look says, and I dodge it, reach for the computer instead. You, out of curiosity, what is that? I point at the beige oval on the screen. Dad leans over to look, casts an inquiring glance to Officer Leduc. The long swamp, Officer Leduc supplies. At the bottom of the valley, see that part of the road used to flood every spring. On the other side of the pale patch, a cross street runs along another expanse of woods, almost as deep. I scroll down past the swamp, down. The green sea seems track us in this direction, bottomless, marked only once by a long, straight scarf of power lines. It takes forever before I find another road, all the way out past the next little satellite suburb. When the grey line of pavement finally appears on the screen, Dad sits back, letting out a little puff of breath like someone's hit him. It's huge, he says, hugging his coffee cup close. I didn't realize, me God. We're focusing on the immediate area, Officer Leduc puts in firmly. A 2-mile radius. She can't be moving very fast. Dad stares at the screen, nodding, not looking at him. Here, look. Officer Leduc takes over the trackpad, drags the screen back to our neighborhood. This is where we're focusing our search today. Okay, he points to the few houses scattered up the hill at the end of the street. We've got our radius divided up into sections, and we're going through them one by one. I'm guessing we'll probably finish up out here. Circles a patch of the green sea out past the end of the house for today, if we make good time, but really we just have to wait and see how things unfold. And like I said, this is our top priority. Right. Dad nods, keeps nodding, his eyes fixed on the screen. Eventually he sets his mug down, slaps his hands against his thighs, and strides from the room, muttering something about taking a shower. I poke at the trackpad, pan back up to the long, pale wound in the green depths. I wonder how deep that water is this time of year. It must be cold. Maybe she went that way, I say hesitantly. Along the creek. Officer Leduc gives me a somber look, then turns back to the screen with a sigh. Anything's possible, he says quietly. But it'd be mighty cold without boots. Mom's already on the phone when she comes striding into the kitchen, her hair still sticking up in frosted tufts, her eyes puffy and red. She's giving deceptively brisk instructions to someone at work, something about blockers that need to be dealt with so they don't fuck up the deployment date. Finally she drops the phone onto the counter and scrubs her hands through her hair, drawing a deep, shaky breath. Not looking at me, hunched over my cold mug at the table beside her. Have the police already come by? She's still using her manager voice, sharp and demanding. Why didn't anyone wake me? I pull away from the interrogation. Dad said you needed. I told him to wake me up. All they said was that. Never mind, she sighs, yanking the ties of her bathrobe closed. I'll find out for myself. The front door opens and closes again with a bang that echoes through the whole silent house. The distant drone of the helicopter shivers through the walls. Outside, a bark and jingle and a pair of men's voices announce the return of the K9 unit. From the window above the sink, I can just see the bushy tail of a big German shepherd weaving back and forth around the feet of the balcony. After a couple of circuits, it tosses its head, pulls its ears back, its tail curls down between its legs, and despite the encouragement of its handlers, it shrinks backward into the garden and flattens itself into the dirt, whimpering. Even when they urge it forward, it won't move. As the police officers stand over the dog, making gestures of bafflement, it takes off like a shot, bolting back to the road, leaving the officers to chase after it. I don't know anything about police dogs, but I don't think that's normal. Not that you could blame the dog for wanting to get the hell out of here. I know the feeling. How hungover are you? I text William. The phone chirps with an answer almost right away, surprising me. Been worse. Why? Arrows today are a why need to leave the house. I hear you. Can't use the empty lot though, too many PPL. Right. I sit back, resisting the feeling that the walls are sidling in closer around me. But then another message pops onto the screen. Fam is out this morning. Come over, we'll make pancakes. Dad, I yell, stuffing the phone in my pocket. Dad, I'm going over to Williams. I'm out the door without waiting to see if he heard me, plunging through the swarm of activity in the driveway, pulling the hood of my sweater up over my ears, blocking out the cameras and the uniforms and the pitying glances from strangers. Mom steps out of the mobile headquarters, letting the door slap closed behind her just as I'm hurrying past. Sky. I'm going to Williams, I toss back at her. Are you kidding me? I recognize the tremor in her voice, and I hunch my shoulders, walk faster. It's the sound of her cool fraying at its limit. If I stay, I'm about to get 30 hours worth of fear and wrath and no sleep in a single screaming payload. That's the way she works, hoarding it under a collected and rational shell until it cracks under the strain. Your sister is missing, in case you hadn't noticed. I'll be back later. You're just going to leave again. This is your family, Sky. This is why this happened in the first place, because you couldn't spend so much as an evening. I raise my hand to ward it off. Don't turn around, keep walking. When I finally give in and glance back, she's stalking back inside, her arms folded, her hand at her mouth. Dad's about to get it. Better him than me. 9 September. William got the empty lot 2 afternoons a week, despite Dad's furious protests. And sometimes I join him. Not often enough to make it weird, but sometimes. We spent the hours shooting mostly in companionable silence, stealing a sliver of time to escape our families. But he'd text me other times to hang out with Sophie. Kevin too, sometimes. Kevin was aloof at first, but when Sophie greeted me with a peal of skies here, he didn't dare hold out for long. Suddenly, the evenings I used to spend avoiding Dada were gloriously full of normal company playing video games on the Wii in Sophie's basement that made us dance to terrible pop anthems till we were breathless and laughing, sneaking bottles from Kevin's dad's beer fridge, roaming the neighborhood like we owned it, though there wasn't much of anywhere to go. "I hate living out here," Sophie said. We were leaning on a crumbling fence that roped off a long, green field tumbling down on one side of the road. The sagging grey barn marked halfway to the highway. The field ended, like everything did, at the woods, the murky green border of another country. The sun sank slowly toward the far edge of the valley, gilding the distant pines, turning the humidity into a thin rose-gold haze. "It's fucking boring," Sophie grumbled. "There's never anything to do." "Yeah, but we'd survive the zombie apocalypse." Kevin smirked. "Right. Oh my god, don't start with that again." She turned to me. "Have you been sorted, Sky Survivor or not?" Beside her, William grinned. "3 guesses, Soph." Sophie rolled her eyes. "It practically is the zombie apocalypse out here. What's that movie where the guy gets out of bed and everyone's been zombified and he doesn't even notice?" "Shaun of the Dead," William supplied. "Whatever. We'd be good for nuclear war too," he went on cheerfully. "There's a reason that bunker's out here." "What bunker?" I asked. Sophie groaned. "Don't encourage him. It's this place they built underground in the 60s in case they had to evacuate the government. It's a museum now. You should go sometime, it's creepy. Only to geeks like you." Kevin slumped over the rail, kicking at one of the posts. "Try boring." Well, if anyone ever dropped a nuke on the city. "Because they would totally bother," Sophie put in. "We'd be pretty safe." "Relatively. Because of the ridge over that way, see. The apocalypse is cooler with zombies anyway," Kevin declared. "The nuclear version's just depressing. We'd be hunting 2-headed deer." "So you're the hunter?" I stole a glance at William, who looked away. "Sure," Kevin said. "Me and William. You should see him with a bow and arrow. This one time a few years ago, he and his dad brought back this huge buck." "I told her about it, Kev," William said shortly. "Oh," Kevin said. And then, seriously, he leaned back from the rail to shoot me a look of deep skepticism. I smiled thinly back. "Anyway," William said, "it wouldn't be that big a deal. There aren't any 2-headed deer around Chernobyl. The animals there are all fine. More of them die of cancer, is all." Kevin made a face. "Right. Depressing. What is it with you guys and the end of the world?" I asked. "It's just interesting," William said. "Like everyone has to show their true colors. Everyone knows who they really are at the end of the world. No more bullshit. No law and order," Kevin added. "No rules." Typical Kevin. Did they have a machine somewhere knocking off copies of the same guy over and over? I'd never had to stay on speaking terms with one of them before. My attempt at it was sort of working. It was enough for William and Sophie anyway, and that was what mattered. He wouldn't challenge them. He needed their approval as much as I did. "I bet you'd totally survive the zombie apocalypse," I told him. "What?" Sophie said. "So a firearm is a free pass?" "You have to admit it's kind of an advantage," William pointed out. "Not just that. He's adaptable," I said. "Throw him into deep water and he figures out how to float. By pushing other people under, if necessary. He does what it takes. He's a survivor." Sophie smacked Kevin's arm. "Pay attention, dumbass, you're getting a compliment." "From Sky." "That's not a compliment," Kevin said. "Come on," William protested, laughing. "She just said you'd survive the zombie apocalypse." "It's true, isn't it?" I said, a little bolder. "You know how to look out for number one. That's what counts." "Right. Sure I do," he shot back, unsmiling. "And I look out for my people. That's why we'd make it. All of us." The pause that followed wasn't quite long enough to be awkward. "I wish you guys would shut up about this," Sophie said. Always the expert at diffusing tension. I don't have any zombie apocalypse skills. That's okay, William said gallantly. We'd protect you. That was Sophie's zombie apocalypse skill right there. Sophie would survive anything. Besides, Kevin added, his habitual smirk re-established, girls automatically have a zombie apocalypse skill. Everyone would have to start having babies, right? Sophie rolled her eyes. Like any girl would pollute the gene pool with you. I matched her tone, snarky but unmoved. Why the hell would you want to have babies in the zombie apocalypse, anyway? Repopulation, William said, with a shrug that said it was obvious, at the same time as Kevin said, bait. He cackled when William punched him. There, see, I swung away from the fence, back to the road, and they followed behind me. He's a survivor. What's so funny? Dada asked that night, frowning. I pressed send on my text, didn't look up at her. Nothing. The frown became a glower. You're always on your stupid phone. Who are you even talking to? Why should you care? Girls, Dad said wearily. I bet I know, Dada muttered. I bet you do, I shot back. Girls. Sky put the phone away at the table, all right. I shrugged and pocketed it, turned my attention to my plate. But a hot little glow in my chest wouldn't let me stay silent. Mom, I said sweetly, I'm going to Bayshore with Sophie after school next Wednesday, okay? Her mom said she'd pick us up. Dada shoved her chair back and stormed from the room, leaving her dinner half-eaten. Mom and Dad exchanged a look, their own private version of chicken. Whose turn was it this time? Dad won. Mom sighed, pushed herself up from the table. Just as well. Mom would have given me a lecture about being kind and considerate when Dada was having a tough time. Dad was too wrung out to bother. The phone in my pocket buzzed again. I stopped myself from reaching for it, but the heat in my chest flared higher. It wasn't my problem if I finally had a life and she didn't. She had the same chance to start over that I did. If she refused to take it, that wasn't my fault. Who are you talking to all the time, anyway? Dad asked eventually, wagging his eyebrows in a tired attempt at teasing. Boys. Just William, I said. And Sophie and Kevin, sometimes, I guess. William, Dad said. Oh. He's nice, I told him, warding off parental concern, and Dad smiled. I know, he said. Your father, Mom said, thinks I should have a talk with you. She spoke with a sort of exasperated amusement as she set the sink to filling and handed me a vegetable peeler. Oh. He says you've been seeing a lot of that boy from up the hill lately. William. She raised her eyebrows at me, inviting me to laugh. He thinks this is a good time to make sure you don't have any questions. I snorted, picking up a potato. That's what I said. She slapped the water off. Personally, I think it's safe to say you've got this. You know you can come and talk to me if you need to, right? Sure. Provided she wasn't on deadline at the time, or absorbed in a project, or handling a Dada crisis. Whatever. She was right, everything was fine, everything was going exactly as it should. Even if I wasn't sure what to do with it, I'd manage. I'd dealt with scarier problems on my own. The only thing she hesitated, and I tensed. There was a certain voice she always used when she was trying to play diplomat between me and Dada to get me to include her, to apologize, to extend the olive branch. Of course that was where this was going. God forbid we talk about my life for 5 minutes at a stretch. I love that you're making friends, Sky. But maybe spend some time with Dada soon. I think she's feeling pretty lonely. I focused on the potato I was peeling and didn't answer. She told me the other day that it's as if you don't even like her anymore. She was bringing out the big guns. And it worked. My conscience prickled. I dumped the potato in the water filling the sink and let it fall into Mom's bowl. She picked it up and started slicing, but I could feel her watching me. I wasn't going to get away without responding to that one. She just always wants to play the same game, I muttered. And you're bored of it. Cue the active listening. I sighed. I'm just done with the kingdoms, you know, I'm too old for that stuff. So is she. Why can't she just grow up, like a normal human being? I wanted to say, but I closed my teeth on the words and fell silent, wielding the peeler in savage little strokes. Bits of potato skin flew into the sink. Maybe there's something else you could do together, Mom suggested after a long moment. Something inside. We're always together, I shot back. I don't even have a different room anymore. How am I supposed to get away from her? There was a telltale sniffle from behind us. I hunched my shoulders and refused to turn around as footsteps thumped away from the kitchen, accelerating toward the end of the hall. A door slammed. Mom closed her eyes and sighed, sagging a little against the counter. We'll talk about this later, she said, sounding pained, and hurried after Dada, wiping her hands on her jeans. Dada didn't leave the room for the rest of the evening, not even to eat dinner. When I finally gave up and went to bed, she was curled up defensively, facing the wall, and didn't look at me. I changed into pajamas, brushed my teeth, turned out the light. Her silence was as pointed as a stick. I sank back against my pillow and sighed. What was I supposed to say if she didn't understand why I was leaving my crown behind? How could I possibly explain? In my dream that night, I was trying to catch up with Mog, following her through Mom's old garden, pushing through the tiger lilies bobbing in her wake, scrambling under the drooping silver limbs of the willow that stood in the corner. Her sleek grey shape wove through the arches of fern fronds like a dolphin through ocean waves, over knotted roots snaking down past where the road should be. The sidewalk cracked and crumbled as strings of Virginia creeper twined across it, a slowly building tsunami of red-tipped green tendrils climbing the mossy trunks of the trees that pushed their way up through the remains of the concrete. I stumbled to a halt among them, my panic climbing with the vines as Mog ran on ahead through the looming woods toward the bike path, down into the mouth of the ravine. I couldn't follow her. Not there. Some champion you are, said a voice. Above and behind me, Dada was perched on the garden's stone retaining wall, her legs dangling down into the air. You're the Queen of Swords, she told me. You have to do something. Panic flashed through me, a lightning strike, with anger boiling up close behind. We'd had this conversation before. I wouldn't listen. Not this time. Not again. No, I snapped. Like I should have then. That's not my job. I ran past her back up the steps between the trees that shouldn't have been there. But the creepers snaked over the concrete and around me. Leaves and flower stalks whispered and twitched and lengthened, growing. Long coiling vines sprang up around my legs, holding me down. They lashed around my torso, bound my arms, reached for my face. Curling tendrils pried at my lips, whip-thin little fingers. I wanted to scream, to beg Dada to help me, but I had to clamp my mouth shut against them. Flowers opened all around me in luminous little moons. I premiere. Morning glories. And behind me, Dada laughed and laughed. I woke to the sound of something screaming. Not a human sound, but the terror in it needed no translation. The jagged shadow of the woods was perfectly still across the star-spattered sky. I sat up, clutching my blanket, as the insect-seeing silence washed back into place. Across the room, Dada's eyes were open, staring at me. Dada, I whispered. Did you hear that? She didn't acknowledge I had spoken. Didn't blink. Stop it, I said, a little louder. You're freaking me out. She sighed and rolled over, away from me, her breath deep and slow. She didn't stir when I whispered her name again. Not actually awake, apparently. But I watched her for a while, anyway, as my dream plucked at me with sharp little fingers, replaying the path of a grey tail through the ferns. Oh God, was Mog still outside? I stumbled into the living room, taking in all her favourite spots with a glance. All empty. But there was a scratch-squeak at the balcony door, making me jump all over again. It was just her paws on the glass, scrabbling to be let in. I hauled the door open, scooped her up, and hugged her close against my chest, letting my heart thud against her warm fur. She permitted it for a moment, then wriggled out of my grasp to thump down onto the kitchen floor, unconcerned. Stupid cat. I drew a trembling breath and sagged against the patio door. Beyond the faintest outlines of my reflection, the night was moonless, the woods perfectly still. I stood there breathing in the smell of water, watching for movement that never came. When I crawled back into bed, Mog was curled up on the pale shadow of Daeda's hair, licking her paws. It was a long time before I could sleep again. 10. The helicopter blades echo across the whole valley, the thin, blue November sky dogging my steps all the way up the hill. William answers the door, still in glasses, squinting a little in the light. "Hey," he says, closing the door behind me, finally shutting out the sound. "How are you doing?" "I've been better." He winces. "Yeah, I imagine. Come sit down. Breakfast is almost ready." This is the first time I've been inside William's house, weirdly enough, considering all the time we've spent together. It's bright and spacious, a little chilly, with high ceilings, windows ripply with age, floors made of wide golden planks overlaid with plush flowery rugs. It smells like an old household, books and wood smoke, overlaid with the warm vanilla scent of cooking. "How late were you up?" He shrugs. "Not that late. The police came by and broke up the party not long after you left." "Oh, shit. It wasn't that big a deal. They gave Kevin a warning, you know, for the alcohol. He was pretty pissed, but hell, get over it." I fold my arms as he pulls plates from the cupboard. "I'm not going to say anything about my own encounter with the police. If they were up there because of me, nobody needs to know that. They were up here yesterday too," he tells me. "They talked to Christina for a while, because Daeda's in her class, I guess." I nod, slide onto one of the stools standing at the fancy granite peninsula. William flipped 2 thick pancakes onto plates, pushes one at me. I pour syrup over the top of it, avoiding his eyes. "And she said that Daeda's a freak, I imagine," I mutter. "Well," he says, after a telling silence, "she said she doesn't really fit in that well. You know." "Yeah. Feeling guilty helps nothing, and it doesn't make any sense anyway. It's not like I could have made friends for her, not like I ever managed it before." I take a bite of pancake, but its fluffy golden sweetness might as well be glue in my mouth. I was supposed to be in charge the other night, when she went missing. My parents were out, and I fell asleep. Mom was in the middle of telling me it's all my fault when I left the house. Maybe I should have stayed, but Roman too couldn't stand it anymore. You know. Oh man, I don't understand how it happened. I wasn't even tired. Like 1 second I was bumming around on the group chat, and next thing I know it's almost midnight. I've never just passed out like that. Why did I have to pick that day to fall asleep? I am not going to cry in front of William. He made pancakes for me. I force myself to take another bite, chew, swallow. "That's just bad luck is all," he says. "She's in 8th grade, right? She's old enough to look after herself. There's no way you could have known something was going to happen." Tempting. But I know better. I put the fork down, grasping for any other direction to take the conversation. "Well, anyway, thanks for breakfast. I was kind of surprised you got my text. I thought you'd be asleep till noon." "Nah. This is late for me. When Dad's around, I have to get up at 'oh God' or cook to work out with him." "Have to," I echo. He shrugs. "Well, it's easier to just do it. You know, this is the last day I get the time to myself for a while." He gets home today. Mum and Christina went to pick him up at the airport. They were going to get brunch, I think, so they'll be home in a couple hours. "That's nice," I say. "That he's coming home, I mean. I guess." He pokes at his pancake. "Like, it's nice when he comes home, sure. But it's kind of a relief when he goes away again too." When I stay silent, watching him, he continues, a few words at a time. "He's gone a lot, so he overcompensates. You know, he's always right here." He puts a hand in front of his nose. "In my face. There's always something. It's like I'm supposed to be this size clone of him. I'm supposed to fit in exactly the same little box. The name's supposed to be some sort of cookie cutter. William Wright plays hockey. William Wright kills things. I don't want to be like him. He pushes the plate away, leans on the counter. I think my worst fear is that I'll wake up someday and discover that I've become William Wright V, having to be right all the time, turning conversations into competitions. I mean, you should get to decide who you're going to be. But did he decide once upon a time, or did he just what if I don't have a choice, you know? Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I say it with enough feeling that he looks up at me, but when I don't elaborate, he waves a hand with a sheepish smile. Anyway, sorry. I don't mean to go on and on about this. You've got worse problems. Except there's nothing I can do about any of them. Trust me, I'd rather talk about basically anything else. He glances at my plate, which I've barely touched. He's only taken a few bites himself. Guess my timing could have been better for breakfast, eh? Sorry. It's amazing. I'm just not very hungry. Yeah. Same. Mostly I could use some coffee, to be honest. He gives me a wan smile that makes me suspect he's more hungover than he's letting on. Want some and then well shoot. Sure. The back porch, a deep, covered shady space that must be heaven in the summer, houses a wooden swing hanging by heavy chains. It creaks as I settle onto it. William hands me a mug and then disappears back into the house to return with another one for himself and a woolly blanket. He offers me one side of it, shrugs the other side around his own shoulders. The swing's not that big, our arms rest snug against each other, my thigh against his, the blanket draped around us. We sit in silence for a while as we look out across the scrubby expanse of their backyard, a juniper-dotted field rising into sumac and cloudy white pines to the east. The coffee is hot, the day thin and bright, leaves skittering across the ground when the wind lifts. Sophie said you guys went out for a while last year, I say casually. The mug slips in William's hands, and he almost drops it in his lap. A little wave splashes out to soak into his jeans, and he swears, scrubbing at it. I hide a smile. Yeah, he manages. What did she say, exactly? I shrug. That it was weird. Did she tell you why we broke up? The real reason, yeah. He slurps at his coffee, frowning. Were you upset when you found out? It was kind of a relief, actually. It was weird. Like we were both playing parts. And I'm not a very good actor. I didn't know how to talk to her anymore when we were dating, you know. Did you like her, though? I thought I did. It kind of operated on contact. Seemed like a good idea at the time. He shrugs. It wasn't the real thing. He looks briefly at me, then away. Silence hums between us. I lean back and watch him over the rim of my mug. I'm tempted to tell him to just say it, almost reckless enough to go there, to see where that conversation leads. Would he back into plausible deniability, pretend not to know what I was talking about? What if he didn't? Dada would hate it if I went out with William. She'd be incandescent with rage. The thought shouldn't be so satisfying when she's missing. When I'm the one who turned away from her, when she ran away to drag me back into being her defender. The same old anger comes bubbling up, thick and hot as magma. I should get to have a life. Why shouldn't I have friends or a boyfriend? But the thought chills quickly into ash. Maybe I don't deserve it. Maybe William deserves better than Psycho Sky playing a part. Suddenly the possibility hanging over us is stifling, and I don't want to face it after all. I shrug the blanket off, sit forward. So, I say, with a false brightness that sounds tinny in my ears. Iros. Yeah. He clears his throat, sets his mug aside. For sure. Iros. He hauls a target out of the shed, a big block of black foam cut into a manicided dye, fluorescent green targets adorning every surface, and sets it up in the middle of the grass, counting paces back from it. Avoiding my eye, maybe. We take turns using William's bow to fire at it, conversation mercifully not required. We're both off our game now, in usually hitting the target at least half the time, but today we waste a ton of time hunting for the orange feathered shafts where they've sailed off into the grass. William even misses once I glance over at him and he makes a face. "What are you doing?" a voice bellows behind us, making us both jump, trying to let her win. William blows his breath out, then puts a smile on and turns around in time for his dad to crush him into a bracing bear hug, thumping him on the back. "It's the day after Halloween, Dad," he says, sounding natural enough. "Cut me some slack." "He was at Kevin's all night," Angie calls, leaning out the back door. "He wasn't even up yet when we left this morning." She catches sight of me and her teasing smile is instantly transmuted into wittied concern. It reminds me of Sophie, that flawless transition. "Sky. Oh, honey. How are you? What can we do to help? I've barely slept since I heard about what happened. Is there any news?" "Not yet," I manage, small and awkward under all their stares. "Thanks for the lasagna. Dad, you remember Sky, right? Her sisters." Sure, he says, frowning at me. "Brent Mackenzie girl." Angie filled me in. I was sorry as hell to hear about everything. "How long has she been gone?" "Since the night before last. 2 days, and they can't find one little kid." "What are they doing down there?" "Well, that's them in the helicopter," William says, "and they were here talking to Mom and Christina yesterday." Bill harums. "God, I wish I'd been here. I'd have given them an earful." "You tell your dad to hold their feet to the fire, okay? They should be going through those woods inch by inch with a fine-toothed comb. Technology's no substitute for knowing the land. If he says the word, he'll have the whole neighborhood down there in 5 minutes flat." Behind him, William massages his forehead with one hand. The gesture telegraphs both a headache and terminal embarrassment. "I'll tell him," I say dutifully. "I'd better go, actually. I don't want to be away too long." "You let us know if you need anything," Angie says. I duck my head and make my escape. When I glance back from the corner of the house, Bill is drawing William's bow, demonstrating something. William stands there with his arms folded, smiling. I hadn't noticed how tired he looked before. I scuff my way home as slowly as I can, kicking rocks into the tall brown cattails that line the ditch beside the road. The helicopter swings past overhead in a long arc, its passage thumping in my ears. "There's no way you could have known, right? You'd think that. You'd think this would be the sort of thing nobody could predict. Except I know data better than anybody. There were signs, and if I'd been paying attention, maybe I could have read them. Maybe it wasn't just last night I missed a cry for help. Have the police found the clearing behind the castle yet?" They haven't mentioned it. But there's no reason they should have said anything. It's not like it's evidence of anything other than the extent of her weirdness. The thought of strangers there, poking through her domain, raising their eyebrows, makes my stomach go cold. The tall dead grass of the empty lot whispers around me as I push through it to the heap of dirt at the far side. Deirdre's influence there is obvious. The ramparts bristle with sticks wedged into the crumbling earth, woven with long spiny thistle stalks, as if she was trying to pen the woods in, or wall us all out. They cast reaching, spiky shadows in the long slant of the sunlight. The faintest trace of a trail darts through the brush around to the other side of the hill, less a path than a path of least resistance. It leads under a pair of cedars canted together into a shadowed doorway. The space beyond is almost a room, no bigger than mine at home, a ring of shaggy trees surrounding twists of tall grass and the thin silver whips of saplings reaching anemity for the sun. The light falls in slivers, shivering gold scraps slicing through the shade. It's colder here. The rough concentric rings of stones are still there, if you know what you're looking for. The back of my neck prickles in protest as I step gingerly across them, but it's just dead as ritual creepiness, and I won't fall for it. I jerk my shoulders to shrug off the goosebumps. But aside from the stones, the clearing is empty. I scuff carefully around the circles to make sure. There are still a few bones left, scattered among the roots of the trees, one long thin skull, maybe a deer's, old and cracked, a femur as long as my forearm, a handful of smaller ones the size of chicken drumsticks. That might be what they are, for all I know, but nothing like I've found here before. Nothing worth commenting on. And what was I planning to do if there was? I stop in the middle of the clearing and let my breath out, hands crammed in my pockets, blinking hard, looking up through the dark combs of cedar branches reaching across the bright sky. Up there something flutters and ripples in the wind, hooked over a high branch way out of reach, far over my head. A long streamer of fabric, light and sinuous, blue as the sky, flecked with silver sparkles. It's one of a dozen or so. All around the clearing, they hang down like sad pennants, torn and fraying, too forlorn to be pretty. Those shredded scraps used to be a dress. My one dress, the one Sophie insisted I buy. I never even got a chance to wear it. And I knew Dada had taken it, though I didn't have any proof until now. I fucking knew it. How did she manage to get them all the way up there? The distant crackle of police radios and the drone of the helicopter have become familiar enough that I've pretty much tuned them out, but one tiny sound cuts through them, yanks my attention back to earth. The sprightly jingle of a bell. It's as real as the birds cawing overhead, the whisper of the cedar boughs, the rasp of my breath. Unmistakable. It's somewhere back there, in the tangle of the trees. I push my way through the cedar circle, into the brambles beyond, their claws snagging my coat, my hair. This close, face to face with them, you can see it's not really accurate to say the woods are motionless. They are moving constantly, in 1,000 tiny ways, reeds sighing, branches trembling under sprinting squirrels. A crow cocks its head to look down at me from high up in a pine tree. There it is again, that twinkling sound. It's coming closer. I could swear it is. Just like last night. Mog, I call, shoving my way through the thicket. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Come on already. It's her. It has to be her. I know the sound that Belle made as she galloped across the lawn. I press on, ducking branches, ignoring the burrs working themselves into the wool of my jacket. At first, I think it's a clump of dead grass I'm about to step over, huddled between two fallen logs, but then a scrap of red cloth snags my eye, and the shape makes sense too fast to look away. Not grass. Fur. Matted into strings. Hanging over bones like wet cloth. With a collar. I reel back from the sight with my hand over my mouth, turn away, press my cheek against the rough bark of a tree. I squeeze my eyes shut but can't unsee it. I want to look closer. I don't want to know how she died. Deep breaths, deep breaths. This isn't new information. It's just closure. That's all. Closure is supposed to be a good thing, the final word that lets you move on, lets you heal. I didn't want it. I didn't want to know. I'm not going to think of what closure might mean for Dada. She's still out there somewhere. One way or another, she's coming home. Fuck closure. We won't need it. Slyly, somewhere in the reeds, the bell twinkles out at me, slinking closer. I freeze, my neck prickling, listening to it pace restlessly around me. But I'm being ridiculous. So I've been chasing somebody else's cat. No wonder it's not coming when I call. Still, I'm suddenly aware that the house has disappeared behind me. The sound of the helicopter has vanished. I'm not panicking. I know the way I came. I slap my way through the underbrush, trying to recognize the shapes of tree trunks, the placement of broken stumps, clumps of moss. Finally, I spot a cluster of cedar trees leaning toward alarmingly off to my right. Somehow I almost veered off course. Breathless with relief, I hurry out of the clearing, back the way I came. I kick a couple of the stones out of the circles as I pass, hurting my foot. My parents don't need to know about this. It would just upset them. It isn't anything they don't know already. It definitely isn't a sign. 11. October. Sophie was trying to figure me out. That was my best guess as to what was going on when one of my attempts at the compliment dance ended in that invitation to go shopping. Maybe I was leveling up. It might have been weird, just the two of us, without William bridging the gap. He was the glue that held our little foursome together. Otherwise the rest of us would probably have bounced off each other in different colliding marbles without a reason for even speaking. But even so, I'd never had people to hang out with before, not like this, and I was determined. I was learning. I'm really glad you asked me, I told her as we strolled through the cool, sunny corridors of the mall. Confidences were part of the game. You always have the best clothes. I'm totally taking notes. Sophie gave me a melty smile and hugged my arm. Are you kidding? It's so nice to finally have another girl around. And someone who's actually nice. She bought one pair of slouchy boots for herself, spending her paycheck from working weekends at an ice cream store. But mostly the point of the outing turned out to be for her to dress me up, especially since Mom depressingly thrilled that I was showing some interest in something as normal as shopping had given me her debit card. Sophie steered me through store after store. Basics from Old Navy, skinny jeans, and t-shirts that clung so tight I'd have said they were too small, but Sophie declared them perfect. We spent half an hour tottering around a shoe store in the highest heels we could find, cracking ourselves up until the sales lady's smile started to look fixed and unhappy. Next came anthropology, where she picked things off the rack and held them up to me, piling them into my arms, pushing me into a dressing room. I don't even know where to start, I protested. With the blue thing, Sophie urged. I made a face. I told you I don't do dresses. You have to at least try it on. It's the rules. Come on, just one. I fished it out of the pile, looked at it doubtfully. It was slinkier than anything I owned, with occasional silver sparkles scattered across the fabric, winking. It suits you, she insisted. Let me guess. Because of my name. No, it's a good color for you. Brings out your eyes. Like pow. Just try it. I rolled my eyes and shut myself in, wrestled the dress off the hanger. So real talk, Sky, Sophie said through the door. What do you think of William? William Wright. Of course William Wright. He's nice, I said, startled. Nice, Sophie echoed. Well, yeah. The kind of nice that people take advantage of. You know, he just likes everyone. But everyone seems to like him back. It's weird. And what about you? There was a sly smile in her voice. Do you like him? Oh, come on. I'm 100% serious here, she protested. I need to know. I'm the one who's going to have to deal with his broken heart if you don't. I threw the straps of the dress over my shoulders and leaned out the door. Okay, what? She gave me a pitying, knowing look, her hands on her hips. He really likes you, she said. Hadn't you noticed? I had, actually. It was hard to miss. But I wrinkled my nose and made my eyes pleading, like I was supposed to. Do you really think so? I've known him since I was, like, 5. I can tell. She stepped into the fitting room and zipped the dress up the back. Do you like him? I ventured, trying to figure out what her agenda was. Not like that. She shrugged. We went out for about 30 seconds last year. You did? Yeah. It was weird. I think it mostly happened because everybody expected it to, you know, and maybe because he needed to prove something to his dad. He has a thing about his dad. But with you, totally different story. Different universe. Are you okay with that? Or, Sky, she said, dimpling. You're so sweet. I'm totally okay with that. Let me put it this way. I broke up with William because I kissed someone else. Her name's Annabelle. Okay. Oh, I said, blinking. Sure. Okay. Not for publication, she said briskly, fluffing my hair forward so it hid my ears. People are assholes. This is strictly on a need-to-know basis. Right. The confidence threw me off balance. I couldn't figure out why she'd trusted me with it. At a school like ours, that was weapons grade. But then again, a carefully placed word from her would set a rumor running through the school faster than a virus. Anyone who made the mistake of double-crossing Sophie would be annihilated. Does Kevin know? Well, obviously. He was the first one I told. I gave her a look. We're talking about the same Kevin, right? The one who was talking about you like someone died and made him the world authority on tits. She burst out laughing. Oh my God, Bethany told me about that. She studied me, her eyes alight. Holy shit. Is that why you decked him? I barely touched him. Oh my god, Sophie repeated, clapping her hands in delight. You're amazing. That's, like, the best thing ever. I can't wait to tell him about this. I eyed her, baffled. Yeah, I bet he'll be thrilled. Seriously. Sophie clasped my arms. Though she kept smiling, her gaze turned searching, like she was willing me to understand something. I can handle myself, okay? You don't need to protect me. Especially not from Kevin. Look, you don't know about his stepmom, do you? What about her? Well, she's married to his mom. They live in this cute little house in town. I had lots of deep, dramatic conversations with them last year. And Kevin was a total lifesaver. Like, he wasn't even surprised. I think he figured it out before I did. He's got this wicked radar for when people are faking it. It's like bullshit is his superpower or something. I frowned at my reflection for a second, digesting this. That's why he's gone half the time, isn't it? Because he's at his mom's. It felt like I owed her for confiding in me, so I said out loud, a little nervously, I figured he was just avoiding me. Hell, come around. He doesn't trust you yet, is all. That's why you're getting the whole peacock display. It's supposed to be, like, some kind of force field. She tilted her head, considering. I should figure out some way to get us all together while he's at his mom's place, actually. I bet that'd do it. Do what? She rolled her eyes. Convince the two of you to fucking chill already. It'd be hilarious if it wasn't so dumb, the way you set each other off. He's really not an asshole. Seriously. He's just convincing. If you say so. Shed turned the world upside down, like a snow globe, scattering everything I thought I knew about them into the air. After all, if Kevin was the kind of asshole I knew, he'd be making a million stupid raunchy jokes about her behind her back. But for all his ostentatious posturing, he'd never let it slip. Not in front of me. Then again, maybe he was smart enough to get that Shed wipe the floor with him without even messing up her hair. Shed do the same with me. Why did she tell me she didn't have to? Well, anyway, she said. I'm going to be after William to actually ask you out, so he'll shut up about you for a while. So be prepared. I was supposed to laugh, but couldn't manage it. I don't know. I was off script. Sophie arched her brows. He barely knows me, you know. He might not like me that much. Up close. Now that, she said, is bullshit. Look, what's not to like? She took my shoulders again and pointed me at the mirror, and then I did laugh, blushing with a shyness I didn't have to feign. It was hard to look that girl in the eye, a softer girl draped in shimmering sky blue fabric that hugged her cleavage and skimmed her bed in your knees. If that was me, anything was possible. Transformation, even. You're a wizard, I told Sophie, and gave her an impulsive hug. You know it, she said smugly. When we walked in the door, Dada's boots were sitting on the linoleum in a spreading puddle, black mud clinging to them in globs. One mud-streaked sock sat discarded beside them, the other was draped over one of the stairs. Smudged black imprints of toes marked her path from the door, punctuating a trail of pine needles and crumbled leaves. Well, looks like my sister's home, I said, and Sophie snorted. I couldn't let it show that I cared, that I'd never wished harder that I could just erase Dada from my life. I'd been counting on her still being outside. She'd shut herself in our room, at least maybe she'd stay safely out of sight. But we'd barely set foot in the kitchen when a clatter, a thump, and a muffled growl of frustration echoed down the hall. I exchanged a glance with Sophie, who smothered a giggle under her hand. When I pushed the door open, Dada sat in the middle of our room, surrounded by dirt and chaos. Bare sticks and cedar boughs were scattered around her on the carpet. She'd shredded one of the flowered sheets from the linen cupboard into long strips. Mom would freak. She was intent on arranging a handful of the sticks in a tall tripod, frustration twisting her lips as the sticks wobbled and fell from the knot she was trying to tie around them with one of the pieces of the sheet. The room was icy cold, window was wide open, and it smelled like a gym, stale and sweaty. I need some string, she exclaimed, barely looking at me. Sky, can you get me some string from the kitchen? This is going to fall apart unless I hold it. Beside me, Sophie looked at me wide-eyed, putting her hand delicately against her nose. I slung my packages to the floor, my face hot. Are you kidding me? I demanded. Dada rolled her eyes in an aggrieved way and ignored me, trying to weave the cloth around the tops of the sticks again. What are you even doing? I knew you wouldn't understand, she muttered. If you're going to be like that, you can just... Oh, right. Sure. If I'm going to be like that. Like what, exactly? She glowered at me for a moment, said something under her breath, and my own breath cinched tight in my chest, a knot of rage. Go ahead and say it, come on, I'm dying to know. She hitched herself around to half turn her back to me, her stringy hair hiding her face. Her shoulder blades poked up around the straps of her spring green dress that had to be ruined. Probably there was no way all that mud was coming out. How was she not freezing? I couldn't do this. Not now. I fought for a grip on my temper, yanking the door shut. Too late. Sophie's smile had vanished into a look I remembered from William's first visit. Ooh, okay. I crossed a line, cared too much, gotten too intense. Sorry, I muttered. I hate sharing a room with her. Wow, poor you, Sophie said, looking back over her shoulder as we retreated down the hall. What a freak show. She was siding with me, but somehow that made me feel worse than ever. Like a turncoat, a traitor. I couldn't come up with a suitably offhand response. Little sisters are embarrassing by nature, Sophie offered as I flopped into a chair at the kitchen table. It's, like, written in the laws of physics somewhere. There's embarrassing, I said, and then there's fucking creepy. I don't understand what is up with her lately. Ever since we moved here, she's just been, I don't know, off the charts. Maybe she needs therapy or something. Probably. Mom and Dad have been muttering about that again lately. For all the good it would do. It wasn't as if it had ever worked before. Mom thinks she's just lonely. Because I've been spending so much time with you guys. She's never been very good at making friends, you know. That, Sophie said firmly, jabbing a finger at me for emphasis, is totally not your problem. She has to sort out her own issues. You can't do it for her. You're allowed to have friends, okay? Friends. What a concept. Until Sophie set it there in front of me, I hadn't really dared to think it. It broke over me like the sun, warm, comforting, a little dazzling. Okay, I managed. Even after she left, with a promise to text me later, I kept the thought wrapped around me, bright and buoyant. Insulation against the scuffle and clatter of whatever Dada was doing in the bedroom. But it turned hot and withering as I tried to hold on to it. Sophie was right, damn it, she was exactly right. It wasn't fair. Dada didn't get to make me tiptoe around her, make me fight to escape her orbit. I steeled myself and lifted my chin before pushing the door to our room open again. Dada threw me a brief, sullen glance and then turned her back on me, rummaging through the sticks on the floor. Go away, she muttered. It's my room too, Dada. I took a deep breath. Look, make a mess if you want to. Whatever. But you don't get to humiliate me in front of my friends. She's your friend. The disdained disbelief in those 3 syllables ignited something. Yeah, sure she is. Why not? She doesn't even know you. None of them do. Right, I snapped. Because you know me so well. Of course I do. She leveled a brief, meaningful glare at me. I know you better than anyone. You do not. That is over. She was getting to me. She always knew how. I'm starting over. All right, why can't you? Why do you have to be like this? You think you've changed so much, Dada snarled. You think you're all popular now because they pat you on the head and let you sit with them at lunch. I couldn't breathe. I'd explode in a million pieces. At least I'm not some spooky, grimy freak who's trying to pretend she's all special and magical when she's just a loser no one can stand because she never washes her goddamn hair. Dada wheeled and threw a handful of sticks at me in a bundle. I flung my hands up to shield my face, automatic as breathing, and they clattered scratchily against my arms, bounced to the floor. "Shut up," she yelled. "You don't understand in making things." Like what I kicked at the sticks on the floor. "What the hell is this supposed to be? You'd better clean it up before Mom gets home, or shell." Daeda's lip curled in an attempt at a sneer, but tears spilled over to slide down her cheeks, leaving tracks through the smudges of dirt. "You don't understand. I knew you wouldn't understand. They told me you wouldn't." "Oh, give me a break. What are you talking about now?" "I'm not telling you," she hurled at me. "You're just like Tyler. You're just like all the rest of them." I didn't think it was possible for me to get any angrier, but I was halfway across the room before I realized it, my hands in fists. "Get away from me." She folded her arms, hunching her thin shoulders. They were shaking. I forced my hands open, forced myself to breathe. "It's my room too, remember, and I'm not cleaning up after your little art project, or whatever it." This time it was a rock she threw at me, her face twisted up into an awful grimace. It left a mark where it hit the wall, a little dent in the drywall. "What the hell, Daeda? Get out," she screamed. "I hate you, you're not my sister, you never were, get out." I slammed the door so hard, the sound echoed all over the house. From the thunk and rattle behind it, more rocks followed the first. "You are going to be in so much trouble," I yelled at the door and stalked away, making my footsteps as heavy as I could. Her wordless shriek followed me down the hall. It was like she was 2 years old. Like she was an animal. And worse, I wanted to scream back. She always dragged me down with her. To my relief and shame, both our parents took my side. It was humiliating, after all this time, going to them for justice. Still, it was surprisingly satisfying to be vindicated. She did cross the line this time. It wasn't just me. Served her right. Marching Daeda through cleaning up took more than an hour, but Mom stuck it out, her orders and Daeda's protests ringing across the whole house. Mom emerged from the battle as I was setting the table for the pasta Dad was making, and collapsed into a chair with a sigh, rubbing her temples. Eventually, it occurred to her to ask about my shopping trip. "Sophie talked me into buying a dress," I admitted. "Sky in a dress?" Mom summoned a laugh. "Okay, this I have to see. Go put it on." I hurried to our room, ignoring Daeda, who was curled on her bed with her back turned to me. But when I rummaged through my purchases quickly once, then again, more thorough-eyed slinky blue fabric was nowhere to be found. I sat back on my heels, reaching for calm, but rage took up a drumbeat in my head, deafening. "What did you do with it?" I said through my teeth. Daeda, predictably, didn't answer, just sniffed and swept her hair away from her face. "Goddamit, Daeda, what did you do?" Mom appeared with a sigh to intervene, to broker peace. "What is it now?" "I can't find it. The dress I bought, she took it. I know she did, and she had scissors in here before." I seized Daeda's shoulder, dragged her around to face me, refusing to let her twist out of my grip. "What did you do with it? Tell me." Mom tried to pull me away, but I was adamant, immovable, shaking Daeda, yelling in her face, and Mom was yelling too, hauling on my arm until I gave in, threw up my hands, stalked back to my side of the room. Daeda, her hands over her arms where I de-gripped them, let loose a long, tearful whimper. Great. Now I was in for it. "Sky, that was unnecessary," Mom snapped. "Are you even going to ask her? Go ahead, ask her what she did with it." Mom leveled a look at Daeda, who pulled her knees up and buried her face in her arms. The whimper became a wail. "You hate me, you all do." "Oh, Daeda, for heaven's sake." I wasn't staying to listen to the rest. I'd heard it all before. I collected the rest of my bags and left the room. Mom tried to extract answers, apologies. She finally declared that Daeda wasn't getting any supper until she talked, but even the next morning, Daeda wouldn't budge. She just folded her arms and looked away from me, sticking her chin out. Mom grounded her from going outside for the rest of the week, but by then, even she could tell it was a lost cause. She pinched the bridge of her nose for a moment as if to ward off a headache as Daeda flounced out to catch the school bus without a fight for once. Mum, I started, but the words ran aground. I didn't know what to say. This was bad, even for Dada. Didn't they notice? Weren't they going to do anything? I know, Sky, she sighed. I'm looking into it. I need referrals, and the people at her school are useless, and well, don't worry about it. Okay, it's not your job. She bumped my cheek with a kiss. I have to get going. I can't keep going in late like this. Dad got the new window for my basement room installed that Saturday. He let me help him carry sheets of drywall inside, showed me how to score through its paper skin with a box cutter and snap it open to reveal the dusty chalk inside. He held the sheets up while I wielded the drill to fasten them in place, and he didn't say anything when I fumbled and sent screws pinging to the floor. With one wall covered, it actually started to look like a real room, somewhere people could live instead of the skeletal underworld of the house. I caught a glimpse of Dada once, slouched and scowling in the doorway, watching us. I busied myself filling in the little craters the screws made in the smooth, white expanse of the new wall. I refused to look back that way long after the pressure of her sulky, jealous glare on my back had faded. Tile, baseboards, paint. Soon the room was finished, fresh and cool and gleaming. A blank slate, just like I wanted. We can expand your plant stand, if you like, Dad offered, and I hugged him and said sure, even though I knew it would be months before he thought of it again. When he left to go upstairs, I stretched out on my back in the middle of the floor, threw my arms as wide as I could on the chilly, unyielding tiles. It was mine. Mine, mine, mine. An oasis. The sun fell over my face and chest like a warm blanket. But a sharp noise at the window, a bang and a scuffle made me jump. Outside the glass loomed an impressive black bird. A raven, maybe were crows that big, its shadow stretched across the floor. I stared at it. It cocked its head to stare back at me with one beady eye. And then it slammed its beak into the window. Bine, bine. Jesus, I exclaimed, and jumped to my feet. Shoo, get lost, get out of here. It hopped an unhurried few paces from the glass and took off into the trees. Its assault on the window had left a mark, a faint scratch that stood out white against the green shadows of the woods beyond. I was trying to puzzle out math homework on the couch when Dada came marching past, looking determined, her arms loaded full of a stack of familiar cardboard boxes. Her dioramas. She hauled them past me into the kitchen, avoiding my stare as studiously as I avoided hers. There was a rustle and a crash from around the corner. Dada. She didn't answer, but stalked back to our room, and returned with another armload. I followed her into the kitchen. Jed smashed the first few, crushed them into the recycling bin, leaving sparkles and feathers scattered over the floor. She set the next stack down beside it, ruthlessly squashing the pile together. Dada, what are you doing? Starting over, she said coldly. But she wasn't listening, had already disappeared back into the living room. I pulled the Queen of Wands from the wreckage, smoothing her bent limbs. Her tinfoil crown was gone. Isn't this what you wanted? She asked, looking up at me through lidded eyes. Isn't this what I said she should do? Move on, grow up. There was no taking this back, anyway. The smashed dioramas made a crunching rattle when I nudged them. Well, I hoped she wasn't going to decide this was a mistake and have some sort of meltdown later. She took one last box overflowing with paper downstairs. When I caught up, she was pushing it into the wood stove, snapping a match against the carton until it flared to life. Dada, I blurted, unable to bear the thought any longer. Dada, you're not doing this because I said. Don't be stupid, she said flatly, and poked the match into the paper, which curled and blackened and sprang into flames. We watched for a few moments as the fire leapt up, and then she pulled the screen closed and looked around at me. Amazingly, she smiled. Maybe a little mockingly. Or, the smile said, I'd have been annoyed if it wasn't so disconcerting. If she hadn't suddenly seemed so much older than me. Seriously, Sky, you should see your face. Don't worry. You were right. So I'm working on something new. Something real this time. You'll see. She reclaimed the Queen of Wands from my nerveless fingers, pulled the screen aside, and threw her into the fire. 12. I'm in my room, leafing half-heartedly through a garden magazine without really seeing it, when Mum yells my name. The urgency in it sends shock waves through my chest. I drop the magazine and run for the stairs. They've found something, they must have found something. What I call, breathless, as I hurry up to the landing. What is it? But when I get to the top of the stairs, Mom, Dad, and Officer Leduc are all looking at me with closed, serious faces. And Officer Leduc is holding my sword. Disappointment washes over me, a crushing weight settling back into place. Oh, I manage. That. I open my mouth to say more, but Mom's voice lashes across the space between us. You owe us an explanation, Sky. The words scatter from my head. I stare at her, bewildered, but she doesn't give me a chance to blunder through an answer. You could have compromised the search, you could have gotten lost to a hurt, or as she chokes to a stop, and Dad puts an arm around her. We talked about this, he says to me darkly. But I look helplessly from Mom's tearful face to Dad's stern one. I didn't. And especially going so deep in the woods. That was dangerous, Sky. It's like they've parachuted in from some alternate universe. I stare at the sword in Officer Leduc's hands and struggle to piece together what they are saying. You mean you found that? We almost didn't. Officer Leduc holds the sword out to me, hilt first. It was at the very edge of our search area today. The guys who found it were pretty excited at first. They thought your sister might have left it there. Until I told them you had it yesterday. It takes me a second to figure out that I'm supposed to take it from him. The wood is cool and smooth in my hand. The room seems to fall dizzily away from me as I watch the light gleam from its polished golden surface. But I can't get any further than that. This doesn't make sense. He said they were working their way down the block, searching through the woods piece by piece. He said they'd probably get out past the end of the street today. They found it all the way out there, especially going so deep in the woods. But it was under the apple tree. I threw it, I saw it land. My first electric thought is that it was Dada, that she picked it up after I went back inside. But how could she have been literally a stone's throw from the house? How could she make her way all the way over there without boots on, without a coat, and leave no trail they would have found her? I know it's hard, feeling like there's nothing you can do, Officer Leduc says quietly. But this is a race against the clock, a case like this. We can't afford to waste time. And your parents need you safe. Understand? I nod dumbly because they are all glaring at me. But the sword draws my eyes, heavy, solid, impossible, undisputable. Maybe an animal picked it up. It's the only other explanation. So why do I suddenly feel exposed, as if something is watching me, wondering idly if it'll rise to the bait? Afternoon slides into evening by slow degrees, and I can't sit still. I throw myself on my bed, and nameless jitters prod me up again, across the room and back. Snapping a kick at the air doesn't help. It just leads me to memories of Dada. Everything does. I shoved the sword under my bed, where I couldn't see it. The harder I ignore it, the more its presence chafes at me, striking little sparks of fear too ridiculous to contemplate. I will not let them set me alight. I will not freak out. I'm not like her. But what if the sparks whisper, flying up around me? What if? It's as if the kingdoms are haunting me. As if Dada's using them, somehow, to reach out to me, pull me in. Which makes no goddamn sense. That was a game. I've never thought very hard about the line between real and make-believe. It's obvious as gravity. Or the difference between awake and dreaming. You might move back and forth between them, but you can always tell them apart. Once you're back on the side that's real, anyway. But I'm not dreaming now. The sword was under the apple tree. And I've never fallen asleep like I did the day she disappeared. What the hell is this what if? No. What if nothing? It's nothing. It's not worth explaining. I'm not thinking about this. I'm not thinking as I pull Mom's rain boots from the closet, not thinking as I slam through the door into the deepening evening. Shadows and chilly silence pull among the trees as I march across the yard toward the empty lot. Browning lawn gives way to tall rustling grass and thistles that catch at my legs. I wade through them up to the bank of the creek, where the water gets deep enough to slice through the reeds in a shining ribbon. I stop there to comb through the grass for a stick. A nice straight one with a witchy fork at the end. Stupid. God, this is stupid. I hope she's good and pleased with herself, wherever she is. I hope she's satisfied. I stab the end of the stick into the muddy bottom of the creek. Twist it around, like a key, as far as my wrist will go. This was how we always opened the gate to the kingdoms. But it's weird without her. All wrong. I could swear Dada is standing right behind me, looking over my shoulder. The cop in the nearest car is frowning at me, wondering what the hell I'm doing. I don't know what I'll tell him if he asks. I shuffle in a hurried circle, splashing in and out of the water. 3 times around the stick in the mud. I'm supposed to say something, I'm supposed to use that oath of hers. Words I haven't spoken since the spring. I almost turn back to the house, but somehow doing this halfway is worse than trying it in the first place. I close my eyes and inhale slowly. Give her back, I mutter. Give her back. I demand it. By the wood, stone, water, and bone. There. I pace around the stick again, making it a chant. Wood, stone, water, bone. I repeat it one more time, walking faster. I lose track of how many circles I've made and keep going until I have to stagger to a dizzy halt, the woods tilting in front of me. The wind rustles in the grass. A crow caws somewhere far away. Nothing moves. Well, obviously. What was I expecting? I yank the key free from the mud and throw it away into the grass. I storm back the way I came, and my idiot tears make the house dim and blurry before me. I don't look back. I want. 13. October. Mum sent me out looking for Dada once a few weeks ago now. I yanked my coat on and stomped outside, scowling. Like I didn't even know where to look. The leaves were turning, and the sullen maze of the trees was ablaze in red and gold. She didn't answer me when I yelled, predictably enough. I crunched through the browning grass through the garden to the edge of the woods. Past the twiggy remains of the rose bushes Mom tried to plant. They'd drooped and wilted within days. It was like the ground had rejected them. I heard somewhere that when they transplant an organ, sometimes the body attacks it, defends itself as if it's being invaded. I teetered down along the tree roots into the shallows of the swamp, branches snagging at my clothes and hair. I pulled my sleeve loose from a clinging branch, and Dada's words to William popped into my mind as clearly as if she'd spoken them beside me. "You're not welcome here." I shivered, folded my arms. The afternoon was tilting into evening, golden light slicing through the leaves. Crows cawed in the treetops, wheeling and swirling in the air, black rags against the rosy clouds. I made a full circuit of the yard, hopping awkwardly over the ragged ditch where the creek had sunk to a sluggish brown trickle, pushed through the tall dead grass to the castle, threaded my way around the back, through the leaning cedar doorway into the chilly shade of the clearing. "Dada," I shouted, turning around and around. "Dada, you have to come home." Stepping backward, I nudged something with my foot, something that rattled away with a hollow sound. A bone, broken and cracked, worn to a silver grey, almost like driftwood. It was one in a pile, carefully stacked, thigh-high. I shied away from them. There was no telling what animals they belonged to. Here the thin comb of a rib cage, there a long leg bone topped with a blackened knob. I thought I might have seen an eye socket staring out at me, or maybe the hollow of a pelvis, but I wasn't looking any closer to find out. I just about tripped over the row of stones in my haste to get away from them, hurried back out into the fading daylight. It was obviously Dada who put them there. Who else? The stone circles were Dada all over. The bones, thought at was a whole new level of creepy, even for her. The thought of what Mum would say about it settled over me, cold and sickening. Whatever. That wasn't my problem. I was done. I'd done my job. It would be dark soon anyway. Grey twilight pooled under the eaves of the forest, in the hollows and the depths, slowly rising. "Mom," I yelled, slamming into the house and kicking off my boots. "Mom, I can't." "Can't what?" Dada asked coolly, passing the stairs on her way to the kitchen. "There you are," I sighed and scowled at her. "Mom sent me out looking for you." "Well, I've been home for, like, 10 minutes, she shot back, tossing her hair. "You could have at least answered me," I snapped. "I know you heard me calling." "Sorry," she said, clearly not sorry. "Yeah, well, I went stomping all over the yard looking for you." I glared at her pointedly. "Like behind the castle, in the trees there." Her face went blank and still, though her eyes didn't leave my face. I shrugged off the memory of her staring at me in the dark, unblinking. "Yeah." The light from the kitchen made her half a silhouette unreadable. "And it was a challenge. I dare." Whatever she was trying to drag me into again, I refused. I pushed past her. Our shoulders clashed, each of us refusing to cede the space. Then came the night Mog didn't come home. It was the first time Dada knocked on the door of my new room, asking if I'd seen her. But none of us had. There had been no squeaking paws at the balcony door at my new window. We called her from the balcony, over and over again. We pulled out a bag of her favorite treats to rattle enticingly. But no light shadow came bounding out of the dark to greet us. We stood side by side at the rail, listening, but the twinkling sound of the bell on her collar never came. The sound of the back door closing pulled me from dreams of our old street, dark and icy, the lights of the houses shining down from higher hills than I remembered, gleaming secretively between trembling evergreen boughs. I lay in bed, muddled and dizzy for a moment, trying to figure out if the sound had been part of my dreams somehow. But then a shadow slipped across the pale wash of the neighbor's far-off porch light, a thin fleeting silhouette. I started upright, but it was only Dada. The ghost of her voice carried through the glass, crying out. I threw my sweater on and hurried upstairs, through the garage, to lean out the back door. The light from the garage spilled out into the yard, catching Dada standing under the apple tree, facing into the woods. Her long nightshirt flapped around her bare legs, a pale flag. "Dada," I called. "Mog," she wailed. "Mog here, kitty here, kitty, kitty." I hugged my sweater close and hurried out toward her. "Dada dare, come inside." I tried to put an arm around her bare shoulders. Her skin was icy under my hand. But she pulled away, sniffled, went back to calling for the cat. "Dada, come inside," I repeated helplessly. "You're going to freeze out here. She'll come back eventually." "You don't understand," Dada said tearfully. "There are things out there. We have to find her before they do. Mog has catitude." I tried to reassure her, but her panic pinched my heart. "She's always made it back before. You don't understand." She stormed away from me, her arms folded over her chest. "This is my fault. I have to find her. I should never have let her out." When I caught up to her again, grabbed her arm, she started to sob, sagging in place like a broken doll. I hugged her, holding her up, bewildered. "Dada, that doesn't even make any sense," I protested. "Mog goes out all the time. She's a cat. It's not like you can give her a curfew." Dada buried her face in her hands. "I wish we'd never come here," she moaned. "I wish we'd never left. I'll never see her again, never, never." "Oh, Dada, you don't know that." But she just pushed away from me, ran back to the house, leaving me behind. Inside the garage, the door opened and closed with a bang. I sighed, shivered, pulled my sweater close around my neck. Behind me, the leaves on the reaching branches fluttered and murmured speculatively. I turned to look up at their pale undersides flickering in the light from the garage. I stood there peering into the dark, every hair alert to the feeling of being watched. Evaluated. "Go away," I snapped, as much to hear my own voice as anything else, and I hurried back to the house, refusing to look over my shoulder. I pulled the garage door closed behind me with a bang and only then let my breath out in a trembling rush, waiting for my jumping heartbeat to slow. I was as bad as Dada. At least nobody had been around to see it. The first few mornings after Mog disappeared, I came upstairs to find Dada asleep on the kitchen floor, waiting by the patio doors for the sound of paws on the glass, her head pillowed on a couch cushion. Mom woke her up while I retreated to the bathroom, cranking the water on to drown out the sound of her crying. She spent more time than ever outside after that. Most days, she was gone when I got home, her backpack and sneakers left forgotten in a heap inside the front door. She came back just when it was getting dark, never quite late enough for Mom to worry, sticks tangled in her hair, her face smudged with dirt. Mom made a big deal over that, hauling Dada into the bathroom, growling all the while about her deadlines. "You're 13, Dada, for heaven's sake," she snapped, jerking the brush through a snarl in Dada's hair. "I shouldn't have to do this, I don't have time." Dada just let her head yank back, expressionless, and said nothing. She seemed calm, at least. Preoccupied. "Are you working on another kingdom?" I asked her at dinner that night, feeling like I should ask. She looked at me suspiciously. "Kind of," she muttered, but didn't elaborate. I focused on cutting my chicken into little pieces to hide my relief and guilt. I didn't ask for details. The night she disappeared, before Mom came barging through my door, I'd been dreaming about the valley, the path and asphalt ribbon winding down the bottom of the ravine toward the river. I couldn't do it again. I'd changed my mind. I had to turn back before I reached the dry streambed, the tumbled rocks leading into green shadow between the trees. But the tangled trees of the swamp had closed over the path behind me like gathering clouds. "Hurry," Dada demanded, crouching down at the crest of the castle to reach out to me, beckoning for me to take her hand. "I'm waiting." 14. My sleep is shallow, full of scurrying dreams, and my eyes snap open at the sound of something scratching at the window. Not like Mog did, with her soft, scrabbling paws. It's a slow, stuttering squeak, something pressing hard against the window pane in a long, stiff stroke. It clicks against the glass on contact like it's pointed. Sharp. I clutch the blankets in the dark. I'm not imagining it. The sound is clumsy, dogged, painful, repeated over and over again. I don't want to look. But what if it's Dada, trying to get my attention, trying to get me to let her in? If it was Dada, she'd knock, wouldn't she? What if she's hurt? When I finally twist around, a looming shadow lurches away from the glass, making me shrink back in my bed with a little shriek. The porch light leaves it in shadow, no more than a silhouette, but it has a corner that lifts and falls. Like a knee or an elbow. Under cloth. I throw the covers off and jump up to look out the window, but the twitching lump of movement steals around the corner of the house and disappears. I run upstairs to the long windows overlooking the yard. Something's out there, skirting the spill of light from the house. Something upright and faintly paler than the night, making swaying, staggering progress toward the edge of the woods. Icy prickles sweep my skin as I watch it shamble across the lawn, but it's too tall to be anything but a person. A person in a dress. I cast frantically around for a flashlight. My phone is sitting on the kitchen table, and I grab it and flick on the light, cram my feet into my sneakers, fling myself down the stairs and out the front door. My breath smokes in the pale wash of the LED light. The grass is slick with rain that soaks through my shoes, icy patches blooming against my toes. My circle of light swings wildly over the ruins of the garden, the bare trunks of the trees, as I pelt around the house. Dada, I cry. Dada, wait. The slight figure of hanging white stands still at the edge of the yard, glowing brighter in the approaching light of my phone. I stumble to a halt at the corner of the house, panting, peering out at it. Is it Dada? It's definitely white cloth I'm looking at. It lifts sluggishly, suddenly, in the wind. Dada, I pant. Dada. The white shape doesn't move. Fumbling, trying not to take my eyes off it, I bend down to pick up one of the long scraps of 2x4 Dad left lying in the grass. It's an awkward weapon, too wide to grip properly. I wish I had my sword. It's only wood, but I know I can do some damage with it. Clutching the phone, holding the 2x4 out defensively, I creep closer. Closer. Dada, is that you? It doesn't move. Not a twitch, not a turn, not a hesitation. Is it her? It has to be her. Dada, please, I whimper. Please let it be her. I'm sorry. Please, please. But in the brightening circle of light from my phone, the cloth is tattered, mud-streaked, trailing on the ground. It hangs strangely, lopsided and shapeless, and what I thought was an arm is a wizened silver branch draped with a scrap of shimmering blue cloth, and a stiff claw of a hand isn't a hand at all, it's an antler. Pale bone. It's turning to face me, with a rustle and creak like a tree bending in the wind, like something stalking through the woods. And its face is bone too. A long, white skull, an animal skull. Sockets emptier than the sky. My scream is breathless, choked, and I drop the phone to swing the 2x4 in a flailing arc. The nightmare figure collapses in pieces with a thunk and clatter. The wet cloth slaps onto the ground, and something glittering flies from the tines of its hands until a chance to land in the grass at my feet. A gleaming gold medallion, a familiar tree twining roots and branches in a knotted circle around its edge. I stand there panting, trying to look everywhere at once. The wind in my ears is the only sound. I snatch the necklace from the grass and run like I've never run before. I run for my life. I run for the safety of the house. When I slam the back door behind me, my legs turn to jelly and I sink dizzily down to sit on the gritty tiles, my breath sobbing in my throat, the necklace a cold hard edge against my palm. For a minute, I'm afraid I might throw up. The bright silence of the house presses down around me. The furnace clicks on, making me jump. I don't go back to my room. I don't wake my parents. I yank the blinds closed with a rattle on all the living room windows, shutting out the night, and throw myself on the couch. I've been clutching the pendant so hard, my fingers are stiff and painful when I unfold them. The tree and its spreading roots and branches are etched in black in its gleaming gold face, forming a swirling, knotted circle. I bought it for her, this past Christmas before we moved. Her mouth fell open when she lifted it from the box. I will remember the look on her face forever. The utter disbelief that it was really for her. Mom helped her with the clasp, and she ran to look in the mirror, then ran back and threw her arms around me so hard, she almost knocked us both over. It's beautiful, she breathed. It's magic. You're the best champion ever. I thought you'd like it, I said. I hold it up by the chain, watching it twist back and forth. Over and over again, I see the monster in the yard turning to face me, the empty hollows of its eyes. I know the difference between awake and dreaming. It can't have happened. Is this me losing my mind? This is what nightmares feel like, with pulsing, unreal fear you can't shake. It's chemical, something pouring through your brain. You can't trust it. But I can still feel the 2x4 in my hands, the reverberation of the wood at the impact, see my breath hanging in a cloud in the air. The sodden, dirty cloth that shrouded the thing, the sprigs of little flowers on it, the sky blue fabric looped around its arms, fraying, familiar. Slinkier than anything I own. Was that what Dada was making in our room that day with the bones in the clearing, the shreds of Mom's sheets, of my dress, that thing? She's been making monsters since we were kids. None of them ever came to life. But she never made them here before, in the shadow of those woods. And she's been getting weirder and weirder ever since arrived. I think of her shoulders standing out white against the dark, bare despite the cold. What if there's something out there, in the forest, something that took over one of her monsters, brought it to life? What if something took her? The thought crushes the air from my lungs. What if the necklace, like the sword, like the bell, is a message, a cry for help, for rescue, or a dare? In my room, I kneel to reach under my bed, fumble across the tiles until my fingers meet wood, and drag the sword out into the light. I sweep through a couple of experimental slashes, a lunge. It's so familiar in my hand. Once upon a time, it was everything. Once upon a time, I was a queen. My wrath was legendary, and nothing could stand before me. And I stood between Dada and anything that dared to challenge her. I vanquished all her enemies. At any cost. But it was never once upon a time. Not really. Once upon a time was a lie. In the real world people are fragile. Even Tyler, large as he loomed, was just a person. No more than human. Breakable. If I go with this, if I let myself believe it's real, if it's real, it means there are monsters, real monsters, out there in the dark. And I'm just Sky. The new Sky who has friends and wears expensive jeans. I'm the one who's breakable, a thin fluttering sapling. I've never felt it so clearly, how defenseless I am, how useless. It screams at me in the pathetic bristling of my skin, the sweat trickling down my side, the sour taste at the back of my mouth. It was taller than me, that thing. Was it the only one? What am I going to do against reanimated sticks and bones? But the Queen of Swords, that's exactly where she belongs. Waging war. Riding to the rescue. I've done my best to bury that person, to forget the roots winding down into the dark. I don't want to follow them. I'm afraid to find out how far down they go. But they were there all along, underneath. If this is real, so is the Queen of Swords, who might have a chance to save Derda. And if she can save Derda, maybe the Queen of Swords isn't a monster. Maybe she never was. Maybe she just needed monsters to fight. I don't want William to see the Queen of Swords. I don't want any of them to know she exists. But they don't need to. This is between me and Derda. All William will know, if I manage this, is that I save her. That I found her in the woods. That's all anybody needs to know. There's no question, no debate. Not really. There's no choice. The Queen of Swords never does have choices. Her path is straight and narrow as her blade. You can't just walk away when someone needs a hero. As the darkness ebbs away, the fog settles in, and the woods are ghostly, spindly shadows sinking into gradations of emptiness, thin grey lines of tree trunks fading with distance. Wisps of vapor swirl around my feet as I walk. My sneakers are still wet. The sword is heavy in my hand, but I keep the point outstretched as long as I can, swinging it every now and again to rest my arm. There's nothing left where the creature fell last night, of course. Just the 2x4 lying in the grass. Well, this will be the test. Real or not. If nothing happens now, it was just a dream. I'll forget all about it. I press forward until the house is a faint suggestion behind me, threatening to disappear. The air is still, clammy as cold hands against my face. Derda's necklace dangles from my hand. If this is real, then there's a way in. There's a way to find her. I'm past caring if it's ridiculous to try this. It's what Derda would do. And for once, that's exactly what I need. To follow her footsteps. If I'm the Queen of Swords, even a kingdom that's turned rogue, grown wild, has to answer to me. I stalk to the very edge of the woods, through the border where the grass gets tall, the ground uneven, riddled with hidden animal holes. You could break your ankle back here if you tried to go too fast. Dad said once that we'd have to add more dirt someday. The water doesn't look like it's moving, but the swamp is eating away at the dirt they used to fill it in, bit by bit, absorbing it too slowly to see. I edge my way onto the jutting shelf of rock that overhangs the tangled maze a few feet below. The dripping silence closes around me. The shadowy trees lean twisted branches overhead, shedding wet leaves in a slow but continuous trickle. They're the only movement. I hold the necklace out and shout raggedly into the woods. You have to take me to her, I demand. I'm her champion. I'm the Queen of Swords. You have to give her back. My voice sinks into the swamp without an echo, but behind me there's a rustle and the soft crunch of a footfall. I whirl to face the same monster from last night, a long, white skull perched atop a misshapen bundle of sticks and cloth, pointed antler fingers reaching out for me. I raise the sword like I can ward it off, but it trembles in my hand. The creature stops just out of my reach, half turns, like a bird or a deer, as if to see me better from the pit of its eye. And oh God, there's another one. It lurches out of the trees on my other side as if it was waiting there. It's shorter than the first, mantled with a bristling pelt that looks like it might be a porcupine's, feathered with long, white spikes. Its torso is armored in strips of rough bark. Another one hobbles behind it on a tripod of long wooden legs bound with long, fluttering strips of dirty cotton. It has one hand. Too many fingers made of thin bone is something's ribs. Above its blunt-fanged muzzle and the gaping hollow of its nose, two mismatched rotten wings fan out like the crest of a fantasy warrior's helm. I stand there, wheeling from one to the next as they close around me. Was this Deirdre's mistake, thinking she could control them? Stay back, I make a desperate feint like I'm about to lunge at them, swiping the air with the sword. I'm the Queen of Swords. God admit you have to tell me what you've done with her. Stay back and answer me by wood, stone, water, and bone. They jerk to a reluctant halt, just out of my reach, and stand in place, swaying, leaning toward me like hungry dogs outside a fence. They smell dank and rotten. The faintest whiff of spoiling meat is a nauseating thread through layers of cold water and decaying leaves. And with a creak and groan of bending wood, they all sink into a low bow, with a twitchy unison flourish like a suppressed smirk. I open my mouth to reiterate my demands, but all through the branches behind me there's a rustle and a flutter of something like birds' wings or overlapping leaves. There's no wind to stir the fog, and the leaves still clinging to the branches hang wet and silent. The sound continues, spirals around me, trailing over my skin, and in it there are words. Look, look, look who's here. A papery cackling washes over me, layers of delighted voices twined together to coil around me. I heft my sword, but there's nothing to threaten with it, just the stick and bone monsters still bent over the ground. Who is it? Look, look, it's the Queen of Swords. The Queen of Swords coming back for her kingdom. Look, look, look. So what I demand? I came back for my sister. Tell me where she is. Or what the voices breathe gleefully. Or what you can tell us, Queen of Swords. Shut up, I smack the sword against the nearest tree, making it quiver. The voices moan like a low wind, laughing. Ooh, oh scary, so scary, Queen of Swords. We're scared now, yes, so scary. Who are you supposed to be, anyway? I yell. Giggles make the trees clack and shiver in the breathless air, stirring the fog into ragged swirls. Maybe we're the Queen of Winds. The whispers twine around me, still laughing. Maybe we're the Queen of Bones, maybe we're the Queen of Broken Promises. That's just a game that was our game, and you've stolen it, you've stolen my sister. Your game, Queen of Swords. Now it's yours. The laughter in the air dies as suddenly as a snuffed flame. Now you want her back. You walked away. She's gone. She's never coming back to you. Go home. She's never coming back. You already walked away. Walk away. Go on. She's my sister, I say through clenched teeth. I'm not walking away. Not without her. So noble, so brave. Look, look at the Queen of Swords trying to win her honor back. Look at the Queen of Swords who fell asleep on her watch, who fell asleep and let the wolves in. And what do you know about that? No response, but the laughter boils up around me again. Desperately, I brandish the necklace at the trees. Look, you came after me. Remember, fine, here I am. What do you want? Walk away, Queen of Swords. Walk away. She's ours. You don't love her. You never did. You walked away. Walk away. Walk away. She's my sister, I wail. Of course I love her. She's ours. We love her more than you do. Ours forever. Walk away. That's not true. You don't even know what that means. Prove it then. The words pour over me, an icy river of contempt. Prove it. Prove it. Prove it. Well, but I let the point of the sword drop to the ground, bereft, bewildered, thinking frantically. How? What do you want? There's a silence, and then I see where this is going. There's something you want me to do, isn't there? Stop playing games and tell me what it is. The branches of the trees shiver. The voices drawl. Oh, let's see, let's give the Queen of Swords some tasks for us, some trials. Yes, let's see her prove it. Yes, prove it. Fine, I snap. Fine. And if I pass, you let us go. Both of us. And never bother us again. Yes, yes, if you pass, the voices sigh, sounding bored, and then they sharpen again, like pointed bone on glass. And if you lose, we keep you both, just for us, for always. For a moment I can't speak, I'll choke on the words. This is a terrible idea. Horror movie level bad idea. But there's nothing else to do. The monsters are looking up at me now, eager and horrible, flexing their bony hands. I stuff the necklace in my pocket so I can hold my sword out with both hands, but there's no way I could keep them at bay all at once. They took Dada. I bet they took Mog too. Next. Could I walk away? Could I really walk away, knowing this was up to me? I'd prove them right. They've got me already. There's no way out or away from this. Only through. And I will win. I have to. The Queen of fucking Swords. All right. Shaking so hard, it comes out in a stutter. Okay. I'll do it. The voices seethe in wordless triumph, like a kettle hissing. Yes, yes you will, oh you will, they bubble. This will be perfect, yes we will have so much fun. Whatever, I snap. What am I supposed to do already? Oh, let's think, what will we ask of the Queen of Swords? She should make us a gift. Yes, the Queen of Swords can give us a present. A present, I echo warily. Like what? Let's start with a secret. Yes, a secret, they hiss. And then they laugh like mad. What do you mean, I shout. They don't listen to me. That doesn't make any sense. What secret? Your secrets, Queen of Swords, your secrets of course. My, she's so dense, she's so dull. Queen of Swords, you're supposed to be SHH harp. You want me to tell you a secret? No, not us. She already told us. We already know. We know all your secrets. What good would that do? We want you to give up a secret. Make a present of it. Give it up. Sacrifice. We want you to pay for it. The last 3 words are like slaps, delivered with such venom that I reel back a few steps. Lay it out in the sun, they purr, the best secret. Let the invaders know who they are dealing with. Queen of Swords, make them understand, make them hate you, make them bow and scurry. Spread your secret far and wide, where we can see, where everyone can see. We are watching you, we are watching, we will know. Make them hate you, hate. Evaders. That's what Dada kept calling William. She hated him before she even set eyes on him. A memory flashes through my head, her crouched over a collection of bones, glancing sullenly up at me. I've heard all about them. What's so different about me and Dada, I demand? How come we're not invaders too? Did we say you're no invader, Queen of Swords? We said no such thing, no. This is how you prove it. Your sister proved she loved us. Now you have to prove it. Prove you're no invader. Make them hate you, or you're one of them, and your sister is ours forever, ours to love and keep. Right, I manage. I feel sick. Sure. Well, give you till the full moon. The words have gone faint, but they're distinct as a breath in my ear. Prove it by the full moon, we are watching. The monsters cross their stick arms over their torsos and hobble back into the woods, disappearing into the fog until they are only the faintest trace of lurching movement, until they vanish altogether. As if they were never here. I stagger backward, my heart thundering in my ears, and slowly turn toward the house. It swims up out of the grey blankness as I stumble across the lawn. That was real. Was that real? Oh God, what am I doing? 15. A secret. There's only one secret. Dada was the only one who knew. In my room, I shove the sword out of sight under my bed, drop the necklace into an empty pot, and push it into a space between the plants on the shelves. And then I don't know what to do with myself, with the hissing, laughing voices replaying in my head. I stand paralyzed in the cool, broadening light, listening to my breath rattling in my ears. Overhead, ordinary footsteps creak into the kitchen, denying it is a reflex. Well, it can't have happened. I won't think about it. It made about as much sense as nightmares ever do. And anyway, what they're asking is impossible. I'm not throwing away everything I've built here because of some sort of fever dream, but it nags at me, belief and fear-taking root, mushrooming up no matter how many times I try to cut it down. I don't have any choice. They have Dada. I'm the only one who can save her. It takes me a couple of tries to make my fingers cooperate enough to manage a Google search on my phone. It's 3 days until the full moon. I should have guessed. I have 3 days to burn everything down. I want to tell myself I don't know what they mean, that they are messing with me. I keep looking for a loophole, some alternate interpretation, but I always knew that the sky ID started to create was a sunny falsehood, one ID had to cut down. Make them understand. Make them hate you. Some things you just can't escape. Dead as dragging me down into the mud again, like she always does, even from wherever they're keeping her. It's not fair. I watch my parents moving like robots through the day, staring out the windows, fielding sad phone calls. They argue, once, dispiritedly, over Dad opening a can of beer. After that, Mom doesn't stop him, and the empties clank into the recycling one by one. The police mill in and out of the driveway. None of it is as real as the certainty perched on my shoulders, digging in its claws. I know exactly what I have to do. But day one bleeds into day two as I pace around my room, as I stare into the inane abyss of my notifications, as I clutch my phone with the contacts pulled up. But eventually I have to admit that I'm just procrastinating. Why would texts or a post even count? It's not like the monsters follow me on Twitter. No, I have to do it face to face. March up the hill and start knocking on doors. And I can't. I drag myself up the stairs in answer to Mom's summons, and I almost jump when I find Sophie waiting for me in the foyer. Get your coat, she says with determined good cheer. We're going to Kevin's place. Where? But I can't, I stammer, looking from her to Mom, but Mom turns an indifferent hand out and trudges wearily back up the stairs. Sophie's perky tone only falters a little. It's okay. Really. I cleared it with her already. I thought maybe you could use some company, while you wait. It's a good night for a fire. I told William to bring some stuff for s'mores. You thought the words lodge in my throat. You don't have to. I mean, maybe you'd rather stay with your family. I don't want to. God, I'm sorry, I'm being so awkward about this. I just thought I'd want my friends with me if it were me. You know, my friends. It levels all my defenses in a single strike. TKO. I have to turn away with a hand over my mouth. Sophie puts a hesitant arm around my shoulders as I gulp for control. I'm sorry. I'll go if you want. The last thing I want to do is make things worse. No, it's okay. I just nobody's ever. I'm making it worse. I press the heels of my hands to my eyes, fight for a breath that's not a sob. Here. She pulls my coat from the closet and tosses it to me. Come on, let's get out of here. The last of the light is seeping from the sky, leaving the woods a silent, ragged silhouette. The silver peal of a bell twinkles somewhere at the feet of the trees. Is that your cat? Sophie asks, looking around for its source. I shake my head and walk as fast as I can, not looking into the gathering dark. After that, she's silent, stealing worried glances at me as I struggle to collect the scattered pieces of my armor. I don't want her to care. It'll eat me alive. It's like she's poisoned me. The gleaming, untouchable gossip queen I've always envied is shrinking at my side, turning into something I can hardly bear to look at. A girl who told me a secret, who will never forgive me for mine. This is really nice of you. I scrub at my eyes with the sleeve of my coat. Sorry, I'm such a mess. Don't be ridiculous. She's your sister. I can't explain, but he'll have to. And soon. We find them on the weedy patio just behind Kevin's house. William crouched in front of a round-bellied decorative stove, poking at a smoking heap of kindling, with Kevin offering helpful commentary. Seriously, how can you suck so bad at this? Shut up and wait 30 seconds, William said equably, not looking up. I thought we were going out to the party rock, Sophie says. We were. William sets a couple of logs against the kindling, knocking some of it over. A tongue of flame smolders reluctantly to life, then flickers out again. It's just I don't know, it's creepy out there tonight. Kevin rolls his eyes. Just as well, since we're apparently doomed to freeze to death in the dark. William gives him a look, and he actually winces. And also, I'm an idiot, Kevin says to the paving stones. Sorry. I'm used to you. I meant it as a joke, but it comes out weird and harsh. Too awkward to take back. I swallow. Anyway, William says after a painful silence, his dad's out on a date, so it's not like we're going to bother anyone if we stay close to the house. Perfect. Is there anything to drink? Hot chocolate, William offers. No. I mean, is there anything to drink? On a school night a few days ago, that tone from sophistical but light enough not to invite confrontation would have had me backpedaling. Tonight, I ignore it. I don't have school tomorrow. If I drink enough, maybe I can tell them. If I drink enough, maybe I won't care. Anesthesia. Seriously. I could really use a drink. Please. They exchange glances. Kevin shrugs and disappears into the house. I just don't want us to get in trouble with your parents, Sophie says. She actually sounds anxious. Don't worry. I sweep the leaves off one of the long lounge chairs, sink down into it. It's not like they'll notice. Kevin emerges with a thermos and a stack of plastic cups, pours me one full of something dark and fizzy that smells faintly like lighter fluid. It's pop but mixed with something fiery and medicinal tasting. I take a long drink, as long as I can, and surface coughing and grimacing. Kevin lifts his own cup in salute, eyebrows raised, and takes a more conservative swallow. William pours himself one too. Sophie reluctantly accepts another. Well, fine, I guess, she sighs. Just one, though. The kindling in the stove collapses, letting out a fresh billow of smoke. Okay, this is pathetic, Kevin declares, setting his drink aside. He disappears around the corner of the house and returns carting a leaf blower. Out of the way, peons. Let's get this party started. He aims the leaf blower at the bottom of the stove and switches it on. Flames gutter into life, flicker higher and higher, lashing in the onslaught until fire spouts out of the top by 2 feet, and we're all laughing and cheering. See, he sets the machine aside, lifts his cup. That's how it's done. You're a genuine man of the woods, Kev, William snorts. #zombie apocalypse skills, Kevin returns, and holds the cup out for a toast. We knock our cups together, and I toss the rest of my drink back, pour another before anyone can object. I still have time, a little bit of time. I can forget for a while. Pretend it's not real. For a while, I can pretend everything is normal, here in the firelight with warmth stealing through my veins. With my friends, laughing under the gibbous moon, the lounge chair becomes a gravity well. Soon I'm flattened into it, my head fuzzy and sloshing, the stars reeling overhead in a slow waltz. You guys didn't have to do this, I tell them. Shut up with that already. Sophie swats my arm. Of course we did. I'm serious, I protest. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. I take a deep breath. I never had friends before. There's a reason. Sophie talks over me. Look, Sky, who cares seriously? That was then. It doesn't matter. Now matters. And now you're a total badass. Simon. I heave a sigh, look out into the dark. The firelight spills over the grass in a wide semicircle that doesn't reach the woods. You don't understand. We like you, Sophie insists. Just deal. She hauls herself out of her seat before I can argue, heads into the house. I hide my face behind my cup to find it empty. Again. I have to tell them. This was supposed to make it easier. I thought it was working. The hurt was melting, turning blunt and shapeless, but now it's rising all around me, overflowing. It was okay that I didn't have friends before, I say, when there was Dada. When there was just me and Dada. William watches me, and Kevin studies the ground, both silent. The fire snaps and settles. The trees loom over us, slicing across the moon. I didn't think you guys really got along, William says eventually. You don't understand, I repeat, and laugh brokenly at my own slurring syllables. You don't understand. My lips feel numb. She wasn't always like that. Not with me. She could be magic. You know, she could halfway convince you anything was real because she believed it so hard. And now my voice is going wobbly. I don't care. Dada wasn't the problem. It was everyone else. We'd have been fine if they could have just left her alone. You need some water, William says firmly, and takes my cup, disappears with it inside. That leaves me and Kevin, which means the end of conversation for a little while. Just as well. I settle back in my chair, stuffing my icy hands in my pockets, marshalling my courage. But Kevin breaks the silence. I don't get you. I let my head drop back against the cushion. Whatever, Kevin. I'm an open book. What you are is kind of mean, he says, startling me into looking around at him. He's watching me, frowning, his knuckles at his mouth. And I don't know, Judgy. Or, I make it a sneer, but I'm stung despite myself. What are you saying? I hurt your feelings? Look, I don't like you either, he shoots back. But my friends are telling you all their secrets for some reason, so I'm at least trying. And you take a shot at me every chance you get. Like, what the hell am I missing something? And what kind of friend are you? I snap. A friend wouldn't talk about Sophie like she's a piece of meat. William doesn't. That was one time, see, Judgy. Yeah, maybe people might judge you when you spout bullshit. What a concept. Do you ever mean anything you say? Do you? He challenges. Your whole voice changes when you talk to Sophie. It's so fake, it's fucking creepy, and I know William's all dazzled by your Wonder Woman act, but... And you're interrogating me about this now. Playing this card feels like losing, but suddenly I don't care anymore. Whatever will shut this conversation down. Tonight. God, they keep telling me you're not an asshole. It works. He falls silent and sits back a little, frowning. I glare at the fire so I won't have to look at him. He thinks he sees right through me, does he? Well, the joke's on him. Mean and Judgy barely scratches the surface. Look, he says finally, I didn't mean to. He stops, tries again. Look, I'm drunk. So are you. This is a good time to call a truce, isn't it? Live and let live, I mean, maybe they're right about both of us. You know, above me the moon goes blurry. The moon that's almost full. I squeeze my eyes shut, but the misery closes over my head. Yeah, I manage. And maybe they're wrong. Here, William says, pulling the patio door closed behind him. Rehydrate. You're going to have a hell of a morning tomorrow otherwise. I put my hands over my face, turn away, trying to hold the pieces together. Sky. It's fine. I'm fine. Forget it. This was a mistake. I flounder off the deck chair, hear my knees collide with the patio stones before the pain sparks reluctantly through to my swimming head. William leans over the chair, trying to help me up. I pull away, stumble to my feet. Sophie's voice rises behind me. Sky, what's wrong, Kevin? What the hell? Don't look at me, Kevin protests. She's the one who... Honestly, you guys, I was inside for 5 minutes. She sounds like my mom. Sky, where are you going? I don't answer, pushing forward into the dark, away from them. The night dissolves into fragments, footsteps catching up with me halfway down the driveway. William's hand on my arm, his arm around my shoulders, half holding me up as we stumble down the hill. The moon glaring down at us, watching. The windows of the house swimming up out of the night, bright and empty. The pale tiles of my bedroom floor, blue in the moonlight, cold against my cheek. The shadow of the sword waiting under my bed, the one thing that seems to stand unmoved as the room spins around me, rocks me to sleep. A hand on my shoulder drags me back to the surface with a rough shake. Sky, wake up. The spinning hasn't stopped, but it's turned nauseating, keeping time with a stabbing pulse in my head. Dad is a silhouette above me, framed by golden light spilling in through the door. I pull away from his hand and curl up on my side with a groan. You scared me, he says. And then, more sharply, you've been drinking. Leave me alone, I mutter. I don't feel so good. Yeah, I bet, he says darkly. You're practically giving off fumes. Leave me alone. I cover my face with my hands. I thought you were more responsible than this, Sky. We can't deal with you acting out now, with your sister. I just wanted to forget for a while, I cry. Isn't that why you do this, to forget? There's a silence. Let's get you into bed, he says gruffly. We'll discuss this in the morning. He helps me to my feet, tucks me fully dressed under the covers. A few minutes later he returns with a couple of Tylenols and a tall glass of water. "Let's not mention this to your mother," he says. "Okay." I swallow the pills, set the rest of the water down on the night table. The clock says it's 107. I close my eyes and turn away from it, bracing myself against the sickening merry-go-round swoop of the darkness around me. This is it. When I get up again, it will be the last day. And I still have to tell. 16. The discussion Dad promised predictably doesn't happen. When I wake up, close to noon, the nausea has dulled to a dizzy, hollow feeling that's almost hunger. But eating seems like an idea from another lifetime. I stay in bed the whole day, and my parents, mercifully, don't intrude. When William texts asking how I'm doing, offering to come over and watch a movie after school, I type sure without letting myself think about it. This time I'll do it, I tell myself. It will be easier if it's just William, if I don't have to face all of them at once. I can tell him. He'll work up to it. If it's the end of the world, it doesn't make any difference if I watch a movie first. I can take 2 or 3 more hours for myself, can't I, before letting the nukes fly. When I open the door, he steps inside, sets down the grocery bag he's carrying, a bag of chipped crinkles at the top, and wraps his arms around me in a careful, gentle hug, as if I'm any of the normal people he cares about, as if it's natural as breathing. And I hug him back, because why the hell not? It shouldn't be comforting, the breadth of his shoulders under my arms, the warm fabric of his shirt against my nose. He smells good like his kitchen, that morning a million years ago. Sun. Vanilla. 2 or 3 hours. I can do this. You look terrible, he says. Thanks, I return, and his mouth tilts into an embarrassed smile. You know what I mean. Yeah. Rough morning. Well, cheese fries are supposed to be the best hangover food, so I brought the closest I could get. He empties the bag onto the couch, potato chips and shrink-wrapped cheese sticks. I make him pick the movie. He shuffles through Netflix for a few minutes before starting Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. It reminds me of you, he explains, with your ninja skills and everything. We sit side by side in silence, watching busty Regency ladies trade haughty dialogue and whip swords from improbable hiding places to splatter zombie blood across the battlefield. I crunch through a handful of chips to be polite. The screen burns into my eyes. When I look away, I find him watching me instead of the movie. He gives me a little smile, guileless. He won't look at me like that once he knows. When the world is ending, everything is permitted. I sink slowly down on the couch to curl up on my side, pillowing my head against his thigh. After a moment, a long moment, he brushes my hair away from my face with warm fingers, rests his hand very carefully on my arm. The afternoon slides away from me like sand through my fingers. And eventually the credits roll, and he squeezes my shoulder and tells me he has to go. Here we are. I push myself upright, let my head hang, wait for deep breaths to steady me. This is it, this is my last chance. I have to tell him. If I tell him, he'll tell everyone else. Won't he? Doesn't that count as telling everyone? I trail helplessly after him as he makes his way to the door. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to say. We can do this again, he offers, a little too casually. You know, if it helps. William. He stops with his hand on the doorknob, alert to the choke in my voice. Do it, I tell myself. Say it. Go on. Yeah, he says slowly. But the words are dying, dry leaves filling my mouth. He's waiting for me to say something so different. It's the end of the world, and he has no idea. I shake my head, mop my eyes. All I can get out is thanks. When I dream that night, it's of Dada, crouched in the garden with her back turned to me. Under the skinny straps of her dress, her shoulders rise and fall, rhythmic digging, tossing the dirt away into black heaps. I push my way toward her, but branches whip across my path, catch at my legs. My progress is slow, as if I'm floundering through deep water. I try to call her name, but my mouth is full of leaves. I spit them out clumsily, and they turn into gold coins, gleaming as they fall, thumping to the ground at my feet. Rage boils through me, a helpless fury at being thwarted, enchanted, and I thrash against the grip of the greenery closing over my head, the leaves slowly eclipsing my sister from my sight. I have to warn her. About that thing in the yard. About the voices waiting for her in the woods. I have to warn her not to follow the bell. But when Dada turns, there's only carved white hollows where her face should be, a grinning skull, and her hands are antlers, ending in wicked points. At her feet is a gaping pit. A grave. You'll grow fine roots, she says meditatively. And the million hands binding me carry me forward, choking, and give me a shove. Topple me into darkness. I jerk back into consciousness, sputtering into my pillow, my mouth dry and gritty as if it really was filled with leaves. It takes a long moment to sort out that the floodlight beaming cold light over my face is just the moon, the full moon. The house is silent. There's a line of light glowing under the door, all the lights still on, keeping watch for Dada. But there's a chilly edge to the air, a taste of cold, green water standing in deep shade, and my heartbeat doesn't slow. I've left it too long. Are they looking for me? Could they get into the house? Hugging my blankets, I sit up, scanning the room. No pale lurching creatures. Nothing. Except that one of the doors that hides the crawl space of doors I helped Dad cut down and install over that creepy cabin of bare concrete. One of them is a little ajar. The latch gleaming. I slap the light on, but it's still true. The door doesn't move, doesn't even quiver. I lean cautiously out over the edge of the bed to get a closer look, and find that something pushed it open, some sort of sinuous tentacles. They've spilled out over the tiles, little rivulets of darkness against the gleaming squares. I fumble to pull my sword from under the bed, almost fall. Are they moving, those tendrils? I don't think they are. I pad closer, step by step, the tiles I see under my feet and prod one with the tip of my sword, then smack it. It doesn't move, but it doesn't yield. They're made of wood. Roots. When I pry the door open, the crawl space is full of them, a thicket of them, knotted into and over one another in a tightly coiled snarl, like a nest of snakes. I let the point of the sword drop to the tiles. All right, I whisper. The sound is harsh in my ears, unnatural. All right. Fine. Message received. It takes 15 minutes to track down Dad's little utility saw buried in the heap of tools on the workbench in the laundry room. It takes me an hour to saw through all the ropey coils that have crept over the threshold so I can close the door again. It doesn't help that I keep imagining the twitch of ragged white cloth at the window. Every click and creak of the house settling in the night is pointed bone on glass, unwelcome footsteps staggering overhead. I pull Dada's necklace from the pot on the shelf and put it around my neck. It's cold and heavy, gleaming hard-edged and bright as a sword. Or a coin. None of it matters. I don't care. I can't afford to care. I'm the Queen of Swords on a mission, and I'll do whatever it takes. I'll deal with whatever ruin I have to call down on us. On me. I suppose I deserve it, anyway. 17. I'm awake before my alarm, opening my eyes to grey dawn from a shifty, ashen sleep. Determination is a cold rock in my belly. I remember this feeling. It means that today I'm going to do something terrible. Today I'm wearing an iron crown. Mom stands at the window, looking out into the woods, hugging a mug of coffee, tapping her nails against it without drinking. She doesn't turn around when I come into the room. The computer's open on the table, the screen crowded with red-lined graphs. It's been a week, she says, without inflection. Like a ghost. Almost a week. She's still out there, Mom. The quiet strength of my voice surprises me. But after everything, that's one thing I know now. One thing to cling to. Even if I can't explain it. Mum presses a hand to her face. They said we have to prepare ourselves for the possibility. Cheers. Mum looks around at me, finally, her eyes brimming with wanting to believe me. I just know it. Okay, she's out there, and she'll be fine. It'll be okay. I swallow. I promise. She sets the coffee down on the table, sloshing a little bit over the side, and wraps her arms tight around me. You always looked after her, she says into my shoulder. I shouldn't have blamed you, Sky. Yeah, you've been really brave, you know that. The words burn. I have to go, I mutter. I'm going to miss the bus. She pulls away, frowning. You're going to school. You're writing code. It just helps take my mind off things. Well, not really, but it's something to do. And it supports our family. It's my job. Anyway, the social worker said she'd come by again today, and you should really spend some more time with her. There's some things I have to do. I pick up her coffee from the table. It's cold and down half of it in a long gulp. It's black and bitter and does nothing to chase the taste of leaves from my mouth. I'll talk to her later. Okay, I have to go. I flee from the house without even bothering to put on a coat. The morning is wet and roaring, with a wind that knifes through my sweater and lashes the bare branches. A white sun sifts through the clouds, a pale and ineffectual circle, and vanishes again. It's one of those drowned end-of-fall days that promises ice and winter following close behind. I duck my head, fold my arms, and soldier up the hill. My ears are already aching from the knives in the wind. I will not falter. I will not doubt myself. I will not listen to the voice in my head still crying out that none of this can be real, that I'm about to spill my guts for no reason. A flash of black feathers bursts across the road, a crow, riding the wild wind. It swoops down among the branches that lean out over the creek, a thicket of silver birch and fuzzy branching sumac, and comes to rest on a bare branch. A branch that moves. A branch connected to a torso of rough bark. A spiky fur cloak. A long, skeletal face. The ground seems to tilt beneath my feet, sending me stumbling back, fear sending tingling runners through my chest and arms. But the monster makes no move toward me. It stands there, immobile as the bones of the forest, utterly silent. After a long moment, it jerks into a bow, the crow still clutching its outstretched twiggy arm, flapping a wing for balance. Watching me. The monster straightens again and twitches its arm skyward, launching the crow back into the air to alight in the trees just down the road. And when I look back to the creek, the figure has vanished. I draw long, shaky breaths, darting glances into the shifting labyrinth of the woods on either side of the street, pulling my hands inside my sleeves. The crow hangs ahead of me in the trees, a silent scrap of black. Finally, I haul my gaze back to my feet and keep moving. So fair watching. They said they would be. The whole thing seems more and more impossible the farther I walk. This can't be real. This can't be happening. Maybe I imagined everything. Maybe I should go home and tell my parents I'm seeing things. Tell them Dad has been kidnapped by monsters. They'd summon the social worker. Call the psychiatrist. Ship me off to the hospital, even. They'd take all of this out of my hands. I could still do it. I don't have to tell. Do I? Voices drift through the air as I trudge around the last corner. Talking, laughing. They fall silent as I approach Kevin, Sophie. William. Hey, Sophie says, all concern. How are you doing? Did they find her? Awkward silence falls when I shake my head. They exchange glances. Are your parents seriously making you go to school today? William says. I can't look at him. I clench my teeth. No. I have to. Sophie winces in sympathy. Kevin shifts a little, looks at his feet. William shuffles over on the rail beside the mailbox to make room for me to perch beside him in my usual spot. I shrug my backpack to the ground so I have something to look at besides them, so my brittle shell won't crack and betray me. When I hop up and settle myself on the rail, William actually puts an arm around me, as if to keep me warm, and I just about come undone. I can't do it. There has to be some future where they don't hate me. But with an explosive snap and ruffle of black wings, a crow sweeps down in front of us, its feet meeting a rail across from us with a clang. Everyone jumps. That, Kevin says with a nervous laugh, is a big fucking bird. He feints a lunge at it, trying to scare it off. It flaps one wing and stays put, eyeing him. I edge away from it, remembering the one that attacked my window. Leave it alone, Kev. Sophie tugs at his arm, looking uneasily at the crow. What if there's something wrong with it? What's it going to do? Kevin counters, smirking. Peck me to death. The crow cocks its head, studies us. Studies me. As if it's waiting. Kevin picks up a rock and pitches it, despite Sophie's protestant, and the bird stands stone still, unfazed, as if to prove it doesn't care, before it gives us a last disdainful look and takes off. It doesn't go far, though, just flutters up into the branches of the huge willow drooping over the eaves of William's stone house across the street. Did you ever hear that crows can recognize people's faces? William says into the silence. There were these researchers catching crows to put bands on their feet, and they had to wear masks because otherwise the crows would dive on them for weeks afterward. Sophie looks up at the crow, tugging her hat down lower over her ears. Nice job, Kevin. Now you've probably pissed it off. Oh, come on, it didn't even do anything, he scoffs. That was creepy, though, Sophie insists. Round and round they go, back and forth. Their voices rattle down around me without meaning. That was real. They saw it too. It's not just me. I can't pretend. My teeth are clenched so hard, my jaw aches. I'm running out of time. The bus will be here soon. What I have to say is a weight crushing down on me. They used to execute people like that, piling heavy stones on their chests until they broke. I just have to start talking. I just have to start somewhere. Anywhere. Get it over with. I almost drowned somebody once, I say loudly. Put like that, it sounds weirdly casual. Like it was an accident, like it was no big deal. But it gets their attention. They all turn to frown at me, the conversation shattered like a reflection in a pool. What Sophie says, like she's not sure she heard me right. William begins, his eyebrows up in a baffled line. I shrug my way out from under his arm. His name was Tyler, I bite out. He was in my year. And he wouldn't leave Dada alone. She said I had to do something, I had to make him stop. I always had to make them stop. It was practically my job. But with Tyler around, nothing I did made any difference anymore. I gave this one guy a black eye once. I whip a punch at the air to demonstrate. William twitches away from me, startled. It just got me suspended. Kevin interrupts, looking uncomfortable. I don't know what your point is here, but... Shut up, Kev, William says. Sky, Sophie puts in uneasily. Maybe this should wait until... No, my voice cracks. No. I have to do this. I have to do it now. They exchange glances. I breathe in, breathe out, my head pounding with adrenaline. Tyler was the ringleader. If I got to him, everyone else would back off. And he knew I could have kicked his ass anytime. But I'd have gotten expelled. And then it would have been open season. She wouldn't have had anyone left to defend her. So, breathe in, breathe out. I took it outside of school. I spent a while following him, figuring him out. He didn't live that far from us. There was Thighs Valley. I have to stop and swallow, close my eyes. He cut through it on the way home. He was so fucking cocky it never occurred to him it might be dangerous to be out there alone. Boys never worry about that. But I was out there too. And I knew where to wait for him. Look, William interrupts. You were protecting your sister. You don't think we get that? You don't understand. I push his hand away from my shoulder. My fingers are white and numb from clutching the railing. There's a river at the bottom of that valley. It's fast and cold, and people drown in it all the time. The words are tumbling out faster now, a machine set in motion, nothing left to lose, no point in stopping. I waited for him by the river. And I hauled him down to the water, and I held his head under. Again and again. I told him I was going to drown him. I told him nobody would ever know the difference, nobody would ever know he hadn't just fallen in. You should have heard him. He cried so hard, he could barely talk. Silence. The wind whistles around us. My heartbeat pulses behind my eyes. I wait for it to sink in, for them to back away, for the mutters of revulsion to start. but all that happens is a touch on my hand that makes me jump. William's fingers closing over mine. "What are you doing?" I demand raggedly. "Did you hear a word I said?" Above our heads, the crow gives a warning call. "I'm running out of time. Isn't this enough? Make them hate you." "Haven't I tried? Is it my fault they can't take a hint?" Sky Sophie trades a look with William. "Look, that's pretty not okay, but I have a sister too," William says. "I get it." His grip is gentle, but he won't let me pull away, and my desperate resolve crystallizes into a spike of rage. I seize his hand, twist his arm around so that his shoulder has to follow. He stumbles off the rail with a yelp of pain and surprise. "Hey," Kevin protests, but I ignore him. "You don't get it," I shout. "You don't get it at all." "Okay, hang on." William tries again, massaging his shoulder, one hand out, placating. I jump down off the rail and slap it away. "Have you ever hurt somebody?" William on purpose. He's backing away from me now, but I stalk closer, my hands in fists, raising my voice to drown out his shaky attempts to talk me down. "It's easy. You barely need to know what you're doing. Want me to show you?" Grab, twist, turn, and I've shoved him face first against the mailbox, his arm pinned behind his back. Another few degrees and I could break your arm. I could do it right here if I wanted to choke you out. I could do it in 10 seconds. Less. How about it? Is that what it's going to take? I push his arm a little higher, a little harder, mashing his cheek against the mailbox metal face. Oh, he gasps. "Let go." "Shit, oh." You think he didn't beg? You think he didn't apologize? A million times behind me somewhere, Sophie is shouting something, shrill, random sounds that I can't string together into words. Imagine if someone was hurting you, and they didn't want anything from you at all except to see you suffer, to see you pay. That's what I did. William, do you think he believed me when I said I'd kill him if he told anybody? You bet he fucking believed it. Kevin pushes his way between us, his eyes wide, his mouth moving, and somewhere far away his voice says things like, "What the fuck, calm down already," and though I let William scramble away out of reach, I grab the arm Kevin's put across my chest and twist and heave, sending him sprawling to the asphalt. He doesn't know how to land, goes down with a cry and a wicked smack of bone against pavement. It's so easy. "Are we done yet?" I demand, panting, as William helps Kevin stagger to his feet, blood streaming down his face. I scream it up into the trees, to the watchers waiting there. "Are we fucking done? Is that enough yet? Are you satisfied?" Soph is still babbling into her phone, her face drawn with panic. Summoning help. One long lunge and I snatch it from her hand, hurl it to the pavement as hard as I can. She shrinks away from me as it bounces once, crunching, and tumbles to a stop in the middle of the road. Silence falls after that. We stare at each other, me and them. Kevin and William draw protectively around Sophie, pulling her away from me. In another world, the bus is wheezing down the road toward us. "What is wrong with you?" Kevin demands, trying to stem his nosebleed with one hand. That was completely fucking psycho. And there it is. I fold my hands over my head, let my shoulders slump. "I know," I say. I throw my bag over my shoulder and run back down the hill, their bewildered, outraged voices following me like arrows. 18. The crow sweeps past me into the sumac branches over the creek. The water makes a narrow grey corridor into the brush, and I storm right into it, ignoring its icy bite soaking through my jeans, after the bird. It startles into flight as I approach, but doesn't go far, just enough to keep me following as it hops from branch to branch, with a guttural clucking like low-voiced laughter. Soon I'm knee-deep in the water, my feet and calves in screaming knots from the cold, and the street is lost behind me, the house vanished from sight. Civilization disappears so fast and so silently. Well, I yell up at the crow, into the treetops. "You took your time, Queen of Swords." The whisper buzzes past my ear like an insect. I almost put up a hand to swat it away. "So what, you got what you wanted?" I told them. That was my secret. I falter. And now they hate me. Now everybody will hate me. Did we really get what we want now, did we? You know you did. Can they hear the frantic rabbit racing of my heartbeat? They can't tell me now that I'm misunderstood. There's nothing else they could have meant. You can't cheat us, Queen of Swords. We know you. That wasn't the real secret, not the one that really costs. It's cheap, barely any flavor. What do you mean that was the only secret? I've got it just cost me all my friends. I made sure it did. You were watching, you saw it. A shiver goes through the brush. The crow twitches its wings, flashing black feathers somehow reminding me of hair flipped over a shoulder. You don't get to change the rules, I shout. You got your fucking present, where's my sister? So hasty, they murmur, so rude. You drag your feet till the moon is full, and now you're so hasty. Is that any way to give a gift? Have some manners, show some respect. I want to scream. I want to hit something. But what am I going to fight? The crow, the trees? I don't even have my sword. I can't fuck this up, not now. I take a deep breath, fold my arms. Sorry. What do you say? Come on now, what's the magic word? I grit my teeth. My feet are numb, my jeans clinging icily to my thighs. Please, I grate out finally. Please. I did what you told me to. Please give me my sister back. Giggles flutter down around me. Look at the Queen of Swords all alone without her friends. Should we have pity on her? Let's think about this, let's consider. Come on, I cry. I did my part, I did what you asked. Isn't that enough? Oh, it's a start. There's a smile in the words, a predatory glee. It's certainly a start. Fine. My teeth are rattling now. Great. So what is it I'm supposed to do next? Meet us in the castle. Y'all need to find the way, of course. Y'all need a guide. What do you mean, a guide? What guide? So dull, Queen of Swords. Sharpen up if you're going to play this game. You already know how your sister did it. I open my mouth to protest because that isn't remotely true. I have no idea what Dada did to get us into this mess. Except for, so I have to make one of those monsters. Is that it? How? Sharpen up, Queen of Swords. Y'all figure it out and y'all have to pay for it, of course. Everything has a price. Like what, exactly, in this case? Y'all figure it out, they drawl. You should know what we like by now. Y'all figure it out. Go figure it out now, go. Perfect, I mutter. The crow's throaty chuckle rises up behind me as I turn and splash back the way I came, stumbling. I'm not going home, not yet. My parents think I'm at school. I should have the whole day to deal with this, to put it behind me, and I'm not going to think about what will happen after that. My soaking jeans feel like they are made of molded ice, but I'm not stopping to change, to risk getting mired in questions the second I walk in the door. I push my way through the grass in the empty lot, around the looming heap of dirt, and through the slanting cedar doorway. Those last few bones haven't moved from their hiding places in the grass. A skull, a long thigh bone, little random bones. I line them up on the ground and crouch over them, hugging my knees to hold the warmth in, trying to think. A few orange sprigs of fallen cedar make an impressive, feathery crest when threaded through the crack in the skull. Twinkling from the ground here and there are bits of broken glass, blue and green and dirt-smudged. I collect them, polish them with a corner of my sweater, spread them out on a rock. 2 of them look about the same size as the eye sockets, which gives me an idea. I wedge them in place, grinding the sharp points against the bone so that 2 mismatched eyes gleam up at me. They ought to like that. I scoured the clearing for possibilities: pebbles, mud, long twiggy branches, and stouter pieces that might be good for building something. Pale, reaching mushrooms. Dead fern fronds. Wet, rocky clay dug from the ground. But the clay proves ineffective at holding any but the smallest pieces together. I wince at the memory of Dada demanding I fetch her some string. String would be perfect right about now. After another flash of insight, I wrestle my sweater off, yank my t-shirt over my head and of the ones I bought with Sophie, and pull the sweater back on by itself, shivering. There's a hole starting in one of the shirt's underarm seams. Cheap crap. But that makes it perfect. I dig my fingers into it and yank until it rips. It takes a surprising amount of time and effort to tear the shirt up further, but between the sharp points on the remaining bits of glass and a desperate strength, I manage it eventually. Still, getting the component pieces lashed together in some configuration that will stand turns out to be a serious pain in the ass. When I think about Dead as creations, though, I can't imagine they're especially sturdy. The one I hit collapsed easily enough. Whatever's animating them must be holding them together too. I resort to leaning my creature against a tree, hoping the woods will do me the same favor. I'm trying to figure out how to get the skull mounted as its head when it dawns on me that the voices yelling in the distance are familiar. They're shouting my name. When I pull my phone from my bag, I have 35 missed calls. All from home. It's not even noon. Sophie's frightened face flashes through my mind. She was calling her parents, who must have marched right down the hill to demand justice from my parents. And the police are still camped out in our driveway. Shit. I take a last hurried stab at hanging the skull from the long, zigzaggy branch I propped up as the creature's spine, and the whole thing falls over with a crash. I smack my fist into the nearest tree in frustration, but I can't stay here any longer. They can't find this place. God knows what they'll think if they see this. I shoulder my bag and duck out through the cedars, running through the grass to the road. I've reached the driveway when Mum comes around the corner of the house, catches sight of me. She staggers a little, like I've hit her. And then she comes running toward me, flings her arms around me so tightly, I can barely move my arms. For a moment, the only sound is her shaky breathing. You, she says in a leaden voice that promises the direst consequences, had better get inside. It's bad enough that my former friends reported my transformation into a raving lunatic, my unprovoked attack at the bus stop. But then I went and disappeared. And surfaced again soaked and filthy, my lips blue-tinged with cold, and my shoes caked in mud and pine needles. It doesn't take a detective to surmise that I'd gone looking for Dada again. Not only am I confined to the house, I'm confined to my room. I can't go out at all. Dad, standing over me, shakes his head. But I'm working on I have to. It's important. I won't go far, I promise. He just looks at me with a beaten, incredulous expression that says, really, forget it, Sky. You don't understand. I can't keep the tremor out of my voice. It's important. What about school? With everything that's going on, are you kidding? You're obviously not coping as it is. His voice goes oddly pointed, his lips thin. It can wait. Some things are more important. Mom, standing behind him, lifts her chin. They don't look at each other, but tension quivers between them. If I got up and left, would they come after me, or would they just start yelling at each other? Dad's weary lecture is followed by one from Mom that's ranting and tearful. I have to pay for Sophie's phone. They are never signing me up for martial arts again, and a brief, stern one from Officer Leduc. I'm lucky I didn't seriously hurt someone. I'm lucky I'm not facing charges. I nod through it, staring at my feet, waiting for the killing blow. But it never falls. There's not a word about Tyler. They don't bother taking my phone away, so in the bright quiet of my room, with muffled voices arguing overhead, I sift through the online wreckage of my attempt at being someone else. A raft of people I barely know are suddenly invisible, having blocked me. Sophie has disavowed me with capitals and exclamation marks, though not by name. TFW, someone you trusted shows you what they're really like. Kevin has chimed in too. I told you so, maybe listen to me next time. His response is followed by a clamour of exclamations and questions from Sophie's handmaidens and ominous replies of D-Menu, and William, absurdly, is trying to play peacekeeper. Come on guys, her sister's missing, of course she's freaking out. JFC William, I know you like her, but wake up, this is not okay. I didn't say it was okay, just saying there's context is all in denial. Much sucks that a GF is a crazy bitch, but SR Sly. This. Your TOO nice, you can do better. I puff out my breath in a ghost of a laugh. Tempted to post a comment agreeing with her. I scan the exchange again. I know you like her. IGF. Well, whatever. That's all about a different person. I'm the Queen of Swords. I'm steel inside. The words bounce off me without impact. Why the hell is he still defending me? It's either sad or hilarious, I can't decide which. But they haven't told anyone about Tyler yet. How is that possible? Why wouldn't they? A text message flashes across the top of the screen. It's from William, 3 letters, WTF. I toss the phone aside. WTF indeed. Welcome to my life. If he has any sense, hell, stay out of it from now on. 19. They only let me out of my room for long enough to sit through a painfully silent dinner, all of us picking at our food, meatballs this time, and potatoes, while evening seeps into the room. I don't know why they even bother. I pass the hours alternately pacing and staring at the ceiling, trying to formulate some sort of plan. I'll have to sneak out tonight after they go to bed. I'm not looking forward to doing this little arts and crafts project in the dark. But it's not like I have a choice. I wait and I wait and I wait. I can't jump too early and give myself away. 3 o'clock ought to do it. Surely that will leave me with an hour or two. I grab Mom's good sharp scissors, the ones we're forbidden to use in case we ruin their edge, which are stowed in a drawer beneath the sewing machine, waiting patiently in the laundry room for her to come back around to that particular project. I take safety pins too. Embroidery floss, contact cement, a roll of copper wire and cutters from Dad's workbench. I go back to my room and pull the sheet from my bed, use the scissors to slice it into hasty, uneven strips. I yank on an extra sweater. I can't risk the creak of the front hall closet opening to get my coat. Finally, I pull the sword out from under the bed. It doesn't really make sense to take it. I'm pretty sure the woods won't try to hurt me if I'm working for them. Still, the weight of it in my hand makes me feel better. The rasp of my bag zipping up slices through the night. The furnace clicks on and whirs to life. In the merciless light, every room stays lit up all night. Since Dad had disappeared, house will never feel truly asleep. Now is as good a time as any. I have to try. I creep up the stairs as soundlessly as possible and pad through the front hall, the silence straining in my ears. Where do you think you're going? I startle so badly that I stumble, clutch the railing to keep myself from falling. Mum is sitting on the stairs going up to the living room, hunched over an empty coffee cup, glaring at me. Jesus, Mom. I asked you a question. I'm going. Sudden inspiration strikes. I'm going to see William. At 3 in the morning. I have to apologize. He probably hates me now. I make my mouth go thin. It's not hard to summon tears when they're not all fake. Please just let me go. Tell him I'm sorry. Mom's expression softens at the edges, but her eyes travel to the sword. It's for protection. I sniffle. I'm not going to walk around in the dark without some way to defend myself. Not after Dada. I let the tears rise up, and Mom sighs, capitulates, sets the mug down to hug me wearily. I'm no different than Dada at all, in the end. I'm as good at this as she is. I was so happy to see you making friends, she whispers. Go back to bed, Sky. You can invite William over to talk in the morning. Okay. That's as far as I'm going to get. I nod, wipe my eyes, and retreat for now. It wasn't wasted. That gives me my opening. An excuse they'll accept because they want to believe it's so bad. I was so happy to see you making friends. They'll bend their rules if they think I'm trying to undo the damage, make nice, piece the new me back together. I owe you an apology. I text William. 3 a.m. is a good time for a text like this. Please come over TMRW so we can talk. There's no response, but I'm not expecting one, not really. He'd be stupid to show up. I mostly hope he doesn't. But if he doesn't, I won't think about what I'll do if he doesn't. I'll figure it out. I lie in bed with the phone in my hand. It stays still, inert, like the bones waiting for me in the woods, waiting to be brought to life. What do you mean? Mom's voice starts dangerous, grows shrill. You can't call off the search. You can't do that. Officer Leduc, leaning earnestly across the table, draws a breath like he's bracing for her to scream or hit him. I know, he says. I wish there was. My little girl is still out there. She's still in those woods somewhere. You haven't found a single sign of her, and you're just going to leave. I can't tell you how sorry I am, he says. I wish I had answers for you. We stayed out here longer than we usually do in this sort of situation. The amount of water back there makes it a challenge, but still honestly, it's strange as hell we haven't found more leads. We just don't have anything left to go on. Given the temperature and how far she could have gone barefoot, I promise you, we have done everything in our power to find her. To one side of her, Dad sinks forward, props his forehead up on his hand. On the other side, Janelle, the social worker, clasps Mum's hand, glances up at me to measure how I'm doing. I look back at her without blinking, regal, unassailable. You'd never know my crown is grinding into my temples with every heartbeat. You think she's dead, Mum says flatly. You're giving up. We're not assuming anything. The file's still open. I mean, if we were looking at a kidnapping or something, it doesn't really add up that way, with her boots back there where we found them, but we can't totally rule it out either. We've talked to people all through the neighborhood, and we'll do it again just to be completely sure we don't miss anything. The second there's any new information, we'll be all over it. But right now, from the woods, we just don't have any answers. Sometimes there aren't any. That's the truth. And it's terrible, and I'm just so sorry. Truly. That's when Dad starts to cry, his rugged reserve crumbling, his shoulders jerking with silent sobs as he buries his face in his hands, and I shove my chair back and wheel from the room, my own hands in fists at my sides. Sometimes there aren't any answers. Sure. But this isn't one of them. The Queen of Swords makes a bad enemy. I will find a way out of the game, fair playing, the trap they think they've set for me. I will smash their bony faces in. I will make this stop. I glance up in the middle of thumping down the stairs and find him looking right at William, who's standing outside the front door, one hand lifted to knock. I freeze, and we stand there staring at each other through the glass. Behind me, Mum is brokenly trying to comfort Dad, and their tearful voices drive me forward, outside, slamming the door to block them out. It works, mostly. William, shaken, looks at me in alarm. Is there news? They're calling off the search. Oh. Wow. Oh my God. I'm really sorry. I shrug, fold my arms. The silence stretches. His arms are folded too. He keeps a safe distance between us, but he watches me in obvious consternation. If he had a script prepared, this wasn't in it. Look, William says eventually, this is obviously a bad time. I should. No. The word escapes more desperately than I meant it to. Please stay. He doesn't answer, just looks at me. But he doesn't leave. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. The words are wooden, dead as leaves in my mouth. For freaking out on you. On everyone. He acknowledges this, the inadequacy of it, with a twist of his lips. It's Kev and Sophie you should apologize to. I mean, all you did to me was twist my arm. I don't think they'd listen. That's not really the point. Well, you're listening. You're here. Roman to appreciate that. He shrugs, studiously neutral, and I lift my chin. I get that you don't want to be friends with me anymore. That's okay. That's probably smart of you. He shifts a little, as if he wants to say something, but instead he just looks out toward the road, then meets my eyes again, still silent. Listen, I'll leave you alone forever after this if that's what you want, but Roman too need your help with something. Please. He opens his mouth to reply, but I push forward. I know I can't ask you for anything after the other day. Are you going to tell me what that was, exactly? He interrupts, a glow of anger in the words. I mean, aside from fucking scary. Was that true, all that stuff you said? I sink onto one of the garden stones, rest my head on my knees, and nod. You get that we kind of have to tell someone. I mean, I convinced Kev and Sophie not to. It's not like we have a ton of information. But that's probably assault what you were talking about. At least. Yeah. Probably. Do you know what he was like afterward, Tyler? I mean, the words come marching out. He was a mess. I didn't need to defend Dada anymore after that. He took over the job. Because I told him to. He took it up, in fact, with a fervor that bordered on hysteria. I swallow. But a little while later people were saying, well, he was on a swim team, and he couldn't even do laps anymore. He had the total panic attacks anytime his face was in the water. Jesus, William says, looking sickened. He quit, obviously. I continue in a heavy monotone. He quit a lot of sports. People said that started happening all of a sudden anytime he was out of breath. God enough. William holds his hands up in surrender, turns away from me and then back again, a helpless little circle. Why would you tell me that? I mean, that's a hell of a secret to keep. I get that, but what the fuck, Sky? Why, you know I have to tell someone. What good do you think that would do? I snap. He never reported it. It was months ago. And what evidence is there besides your say-so? I don't know. Okay, it's the right thing to do. Sure it is. Right. Because everything's that simple. Go ahead. You totally should. Just not yet. Okay, please. I had no choice. She's my sister. That's a pretty big fucking favor, he says tightly. And then, look. I'll give you a week, all right, a week. And if you haven't said anything about it by then, I'm going to have to. That's fair, I say faintly. He sighs. But that's not what I need your help with. Yeah, seriously, you can't be serious. I can't explain this to you, okay? My voice is fraying. That's fine. That's great. There's something I have to do. I don't want to. I don't have a choice. It's the same thing all over again. She always does this to me. And I mean, if you hate me now, that's fine, you're supposed to. But I really, really need your help. I wouldn't ask if I went desperate, all right? I don't have a choice. I don't. His hand on my arm startles me, a brief, warm, awkward clasp quickly withdrawn. He sits beside me. I don't hate you, he says. Oh, I manage. And then I burst into tears. I do it right on cue, my face hidden against my knees. I cry for Dada, I cry for my family, I cry for all my awful manipulative bullshit. It's so easy. And I don't have a choice. All I have to tell them is that William came by. That we talked. That we're going for a walk tomorrow, after school. I can do that, right? I plead, and Mom hesitates, but Dad shrugs brokenly, all resistance gone. Sure, he says. Fine. Take your phone with you, is all. Brent, Mom protests, but he's already disappeared down the hall. She rubs her eyes, gives a little huff of a sigh. You tell us when you're going to be home. Got that? If you're 30 seconds late, I will call the police back here so fast. I won't be. Even now I'm still the reliable one, the one they trust. After that, all I have to do is smuggle my backpack and the sword out to the garage. And then I wait. 20. Maybe they've managed to do something to the time, out there. It funnels by so slowly. Piece by piece, the circus packs up and rolls out of our driveway, leaving nothing but churned up gravel. In my room, I stalk through steps and combinations, whipping my fists and feet out at invisible enemies. Upstairs, Mom and Dad are arguing again. It's my job, Mom yells at one point. The hours tick past through a restless night into a thin grey day with stray bits of snow fluttering from the sky. Mum rattles away on the computer at the kitchen table, intense and hollow in the wash of light from the screen at the opposite end of the house. Dad stays slumped in bed in front of the TV. Neither of them look up when I pass. It's like the house has fractured into 3 separate worlds, with splintered edges that cut when they collide. 4 o'clock snails past. 5 o'clock. Maybe William changed his mind, maybe he's not coming. I could hardly blame him. I could just leave, say I'm meeting him somewhere. Would they buy that? But finally, there's a knock on the door. William stands looking warily at me, hands in his coat pockets. I shout up the stairs to let my parents know I'm leaving. that he'll be back by 8. I hurry out into the leaden evening without waiting for a response, pulling the door closed. It'll be dark soon, I mutter. Not that soon. Why, I thought you said we were just going. It doesn't matter. Come on. I lead him around the garage to the back door, where I shoulder the backpack. He raises his eyebrows at the sword in my hand, but doesn't comment. He falls into step beside me as we crunch down the driveway. When I glance at him, his face is closed and worried, and he's looking anywhere but at me. The house recedes behind us. With the windows all lit up, it's easy to tell they're empty. No one's watching. I veer off the road into the tall brown grass of the empty lot. What exactly are we doing? William asks finally. Not we. I. There's something I have to do. I stop in the shadow of the castle. It looms over us, craggy, inert. You wait here, but sit down so they can't see you from the house. Okay, what? He steps back, frowning. Just a minute. I'm not going far, I insist. I promise. I'll just be over there. See, in those trees. Just wait for me. Please. Know what the hell, Sky? I'll be fine. Really. I just need a couple of hours to myself, okay, out here. I won't go anywhere. I'll be in earshot. I'll call over every now and again to prove it. Please, William. I'll go with you, he says firmly, but I shake my head. No. No, just wait here. Don't follow me, and don't spy on me. This is personal, private. It's between me and my sister. I don't want to get into it. It's just something I have to do. Okay. He peers at me for a moment, then swipes his hands over his hair and sighs. This is bullshit, he says, but sits on a grey piece of fallen log, clasps his hands, bouncing his heels unhappily. Tell me about it. I'll be back in a bit. I promise. Don't follow me. He spreads his hands in an all right gesture and pulls out his phone. I push past him through the grass, casting a glance over my shoulder to make sure, but he's hunched over the screen, not looking at me. I hurry around the back of the castle, through the cedars, and kneel beside the tumbled remains of the creature I was making, slinging the backpack to the ground. Okay, this is where it'll be, I call over my shoulder. I'm not far, see. Whatever, William calls back, plainly annoyed but cooperating. At least for now. I let my breath out and get to work. It takes some experimenting, but the wire turns out to be perfect. It works much better than the cloth to bind the pieces together. I use the pliers to twist the loose ends into little spirals, a touch Dada would approve of. Sky, William calls. Still here, I return, not looking up. After a few tries, I even manage to get the whole thing to stand upright, balancing on large stone feet. Threading wire through the skull lets me fasten it in place at the top. It sags to one side, but it stays. By the time I toss the wire into my bag again, trying to think of what else I could add, daylight is seeping away, the bones turn faint and luminous, the trees silhouetted against the sky. An all-too-familiar skeletal face stares out at me from among the trunks, hanging ghostly above a swath of white cloth. I scramble away from it, fumbling in the grass for my sword, and it hobbles after me, spreading pointed antler hands wide in a low bow. We underestimated you. The voices teem with pure delight. Oh, we did not give you enough credit, Queen of Swords. How magnificent you are, more stern and pointy than we ever thought. Thanks, I say cautiously, remembering just in time to keep my voice down. This is going to work for you, then. Oh yes. Oh yes. We know him of old. Poor jester, poor lovesick puppy. Give him here, serve him up, give him to us, call him over, call. What the world takes a sickening plunge sideways as I figure out what they're talking about. No. Oh no. No, that wasn't part of the deal. You promised to pay, they hiss. We told you there would be payment, we warned you, and you've brought us SSSS such a nice gift. Oh yes, we've longed to feast on the bones of William Wright. No, shut up, the voices twine around me, giggling, though I toss my head and shrug and swat at the air, trying to shake them off. That's not fair. That's not why he's here. So then we can keep you instead, they purr. In the twilight, the leaning shape of the monster looms closer, bony hands reaching out to tap my sword mockingly, a sound that echoes wood on bone. This is the payment we demand, and if you want pay, you lose, and we keep you forever, we keep the Queen of Swords for always. No, stay back, it comes out a squeak. I have to warn William. I have to tell him to run. But when I turn to shout over my shoulder, my lips already forming his name, he's right there. A shadow crouched frozen among the shadows of the trees, one hand holding up a rock, ready to throw it. He meets my eyes, his face pale and horrified.